I looked at the video playing on my phone and couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was footage from our home security cameras showing our bedroom. I have an app on my phone that lets me see what's happening at home when I'm not there. In the video, I saw my husband with another woman. They seemed very close, like more than just friends. Then, I heard their voices. You sure she doesn't suspect anything? Yeah. I've been following your instructions exactly. She has no idea. It's going perfectly. I can't believe it. They laughed together. Then they playfully got onto the bed. I couldn't believe it. The woman with my husband was actually my own sister. My name is Nancy Hadley. I'm 50 years old. My husband David is turning 55 this year. We've been married for 20 years and we don't have any children. We used to have a comfortable life because we both worked. But things changed about 10 years ago when David was diagnosed with early onset dementia. As time passed, David's memory problems got worse. He started forgetting important meetings with clients and even how to do his job. Work became really hard for him, and everyday tasks became a struggle. He'd forget where he put things, how to dress himself. And he'd often get lost and bump into things because he couldn't remember directions. Once, he even left the kettle on, which nearly caused a fire. So David and I decided to ask my sister, Anne, for help. She runs a care home, so we trusted her advice. We took David to a hospital she recommended for tests, and that's when the doctors told us he had early onset dementia. Because of this, David had to stop working, and now we have a caregiver from Anne's facility come to our home twice a week to help out. Nowadays, I'm the one bringing in the money for our family, working hard every day, I said with a sigh. Nancy, how's David holding up? It was the day our regular caregiver, Ms. Johnson, came over. Annie came along with her. And you came too. He's your husband after all, so I'm worried too. Ever since we started relying on Anne's help, she would often come over before I went to work. She's been looking after David like a brother ever since we got married, because she always wanted a big brother when we were younger. She was really upset when David was diagnosed with dementia, even though she was supposed to be busy with work herself. I really appreciate her checking in on us like this. I'm so grateful to Anne and Ms. Johnson for helping me take care of David while I'm at work. If I didn't have my job, we'd have money problems, so I'm really thankful for them. But they can't come on weekends, so I'm the only one taking care of David then. I'm working during the week and looking after David on weekends, and I hardly have any time for myself. I didn't realize it before, but I must be really tired, I explained. A nurse who knew me from the hospital where I took David for his checkups noticed how tired I looked. Mrs. Hadley, taking care of your husband is tough, but you need some time for yourself to rest. You're right. I know that. I could ask Anne and Ms. Johnson for help if I really needed it, but I don't want to bother them anymore. Oh, by the way, there's a new nurse here who used to work at a dementia hospital in New York. Maybe she can offer some help. See, there she is, the nurse pointed out. When I followed the nurse's gesture, I couldn't believe what I saw. It was Amy, my best friend from college. Amy looked just as surprised as I felt. We hugged each other tightly, overjoyed to be reunited. Amy, who used to play softball in college, still looked sharp with her neat short haircut. Nancy, you look exactly the same. And you haven't changed a bit, Amy. I'm so happy to see you. Amy shared that she had waited for her kids to grow up, ended her marriage, and come back to our hometown. Just tell me when you're free for a coffee, she suggested. When David finished his test and came out of the examination room in his wheelchair, Amy seemed taken aback. Oh, this is my husband, David. It feels like forever since we got married. Yep, it's been quite a while, I agreed. Amy, crouching down to David's eye level in the wheelchair, stopped for a moment. Is everything okay? I'm sorry, David. We met at your wedding once. Really? I'm counting on you for future care. Thanks in advance. David smiled at her and replied. Amy seemed to be studying David with a thoughtful expression. Maybe seeing my confusion, she stood up with a smile. I've looked after many patients like your husband before. So, if you ever need advice, I'm here for you. I think I can help, Amy offered. Yeah, I'll definitely count on you. Thanks, Amy. We waved goodbye. After that, I bumped into Amy several times. Like when I went to pick up David's medicine or when his health worsened. Each time, Amy looked at me with worry, but I pretended not to notice and shrugged it off. A few months after reconnecting with Amy, David and I went to the hospital together. Just as David was called in for his examination, I heard someone call my name. When I turned around, there was Amy, looking serious. "Amy, is everything okay?" "David just went in for his exam. Can we talk for a moment?" "Yeah, sure," Amy replied, leading me to a counseling room. "Nancy, how are you managing with David? And are you worried about me?" "Thanks," I began, discussing David's recent health and how the constant caregiving was affecting me physically. Amy listened closely, and I thought she was simply concerned about my well-being. But then she said something unexpected. "Actually, Nancy." What she told me next was hard to believe. About a week before we met again, Amy started, recounting a shopping trip where she saw Anne with a man she recognized. Anne's face was familiar as my sister, but Amy also thought she recognized the man. When Amy approached and Anne introduced him as her boyfriend, it wasn't until we met again at the hospital that I realized it was David, your husband. It all seemed so confusing. "That's really surprising. No wonder you seemed puzzled at the time," I remarked. Amy explained that she had seen Anne and David together in town a week before we crossed paths again. However, David didn't seem to notice Amy's presence at all. I looked quite different then. I had long hair and wore glasses. That might explain why he didn't recognize me, but still. "Also, there's something else bothering me," Amy continued. She noticed that David's behavior at the hospital didn't match someone with dementia. It felt unnatural, almost like someone pretending to have dementia. "The man I saw in town was walking confidently, speaking clearly. He seemed perfectly healthy. Could there have been a mix-up? Maybe you mistook him for someone else?" "I don't think so. You know, David has those distinct moles under his right eye, right? The man with Anne had them too. It's kind of a distinctive feature for a guy." "I'm sorry, I shouldn't talk about your husband like that." Amy apologized, realizing her comment might have been inappropriate. "But it's true, David does have those moles. It's not common to find someone else with the same face and moles in the same spot. So could it be that David has been pretending to have dementia for 10 years and is having an affair with Anne?" It was a shocking idea, but Amy seemed sincere. "Honestly, I don't think this hospital is very good," Amy confessed. "The doctors here aren't great, and I've heard some bad rumors too. Doesn't it seem odd that they have so many patients? So, I really think you should get David properly checked to see if he really has dementia," Amy said, looking serious. Amy's words struck me deeply. I went to a big store and bought a home security camera. I placed it in hidden spots in the living room and bedroom to secretly record what was happening while I was at work. I set it up to watch on my smartphone and checked in during breaks. To my surprise, David's behavior on camera was different from what he showed me. He didn't seem confused or lost. He was living quite normally. Plus, when Miss Johnson, who had asked to care for David, arrived, there was no sign of her taking care of him. I also discovered that Anne had been visiting my house frequently while I was away. Their conversations were clearly recorded on the footage. "You're not getting caught pretending to have dementia, right, David?" Anne asked. "Yeah, pretending not to know the date or where things are is working perfectly, just like Anne suggested. Acting like I can't write or go outside, and mixing up day and night, seems to be fooling Nancy. She's trusting, so she won't suspect a thing. And as for Miss Johnson, she's fine. She's a single mom and needs the money. I've been paying her more, and she's staying quiet," David explained. They laughed together, flirted, and then went to the bedroom. I was stunned when I saw the footage. I couldn't believe my own sister and husband were scheming behind my back. But the proof was right there on the camera. I felt lost, confronted with the undeniable truth. A few days later, I felt the need to speak with Miss Johnson, who had been looking after David. When I reached out to her, she said she could meet the following Saturday. I went to her apartment and showed her the footage. She looked defeated and apologized tearfully, admitting, "What you see in this footage is the truth. I've been lying to you all this time, and I'm truly sorry. I don't have a license, and I was struggling to find another job. Anne offered me a job with good pay, so I went along with her plan." Despite her need for money, Miss Johnson felt guilty for assisting Anne in deceiving someone. Because of her guilt, I was able to obtain her testimony. She also gave me copies of receipts, daily reports, and her diary from that time. No matter how desperate I was for money, what I did was wrong as a human being. "I'm deeply sorry," she repeated her apologies. With Miss Johnson's evidence and testimony, I decided to gather more proof. After speaking with a few other involved parties and hearing their accounts, I consulted my lawyer and chose to confront David and Anne at the place where they were having their affair. On a typical weekday, I pretended to leave for work as usual and waited near my house. When Anne arrived, and it seemed like the right moment, likely when they were occupied with each other, I returned home and caught them in the act. They panicked, unable to escape, and I spoke coldly. "I know everything now, David." David's expression shifted from surprise to guilt as he looked at me. "I heard you lost interest in your job," Cap pushed aside, "and began to dislike your work. A colleague told me. You were telling your coworkers, there's nothing left for me here. Nancy is earning well. I want to quit and live a relaxed life." Seeing my composed demeanor, David started confessing hastily. "It wasn't my idea, it was Anne who tempted me. She suggested we pretend to have dementia, and you take care of us while you're at work. We could meet as much as we wanted. Even Miss Johnson was hired by Anne to create an alibi." His words seemed to shift the blame onto Anne, portraying himself as a victim. But Anne's reaction was explosive. "What on earth? David was just as involved in the plan, and now he's trying to dodge responsibility. That's cowardly. Shut up. You're the one who pushed me into this." "I just went along with it," David fired back. My heart grew colder as they argued, completely exposed. I couldn't bear to witness this any longer. "That's it, both of you get out." I decided to take drastic action. I threw them out of the living room window, along with their scattered clothes from Anne's purse, then shut the window. Despite their banging and pleas for explanation, I closed the curtains and ignored them. When they wouldn't stop, I sent a firm message on WhatsApp. "Be quiet. If you don't leave now, I'll call the cops." Suddenly, they fell silent. Their constant visits and messages on WhatsApp grated on my nerves in the following days. So, I sold the house and moved to a weekly rental apartment. When David was diagnosed with dementia, I had changed the house title to my name. David, now retired, couldn't pay the mortgage anymore, and I made the change beforehand to avoid complications with decision-making authority in his condition. Selling the house unexpectedly fetched a good price, allowing me to buy an apartment with the saved money. Though I hadn't anticipated this situation, past Nancy had done well. I filed for divorce from David and claimed a fair share of assets. It wasn't about whether he could pay or not. It was a statement of "you did this to me, I'll never forgive or forget it." After divorcing me, David remarried and now lives in Anne's house. However, it seems their relationship isn't going well. My assumption is that they were swept up in the excitement of their affair. But once they got married, reality hit them. They can no longer just be lovers living together. They have to face the ups and downs of married life, and it must be tough for them. Even if they consider breaking up, both of their parents have passed away, and the house we used to live in has been sold. They have no family to rely on and nowhere to escape, so they're left to deal with everything on their own. Frankly, I couldn't care less. I believe they got what they deserved. Thanks to Miss Johnson's revelation, Anne's facility lost its license and was shut down. It turns out the facility wasn't making enough money to repay the loans they took out when they opened, so Anne now has a lot of debt. It seems like a fitting punishment for a sister who stole her own sister's husband. As for the quack doctor who gave the fake diagnosis, he faced consequences too. After the incident, his staff, including Amy, quit one by one, making it impossible to keep his clinic open. It turns out he was issuing false medical reports for profit, just like he did for David, and this led to his downfall. Learning the truth shocked me. I realized how outrageous some doctors can be. But I also had to admit my own fault. I was too trusting. I took my sister's word and the quack doctor's claims without questioning them. According to Amy, I'm too kind and trusting. I don't like to doubt people. But now, I'm reflecting on that. I realize I need to be more skeptical and think for myself. Amy seems to have found a new job at a large general hospital in the neighboring town, and she's doing really well there. Her experience from working in a New York hospital is highly valued, and she's already earned the trust of her colleagues. She seems to be enjoying her work a lot. On Amy's recommendation, Miss Johnson also started working at the hospital cafeteria, which is great news. Amy's eyes light up whenever she sees my puppy playing with a ball. I brought him home about a month ago, and he's become my precious companion, comforting me after long days at work. Since I got him, Amy has been visiting my apartment more often. She claims it's because he's so cute. But I know she's also worried about me, even if she won't admit it. Even though I've lost my husband, I'm grateful to spend this wonderful time with my best friend. Being single and enjoying the company of another woman doesn't sound so bad after all.
I'll be staying here from now on. Get used to it. I nearly dropped my purse. Lorraine's voice cut through the air like a bad joke fallen flat. What? Since when? Kevin stood to the side, shifting on his feet, avoiding my eyes. He tried to muster a weak smile. Mom needed a place, Elena. She'll stay with us for a while. I could feel my blood boiling. A place? Kevin, we didn't discuss this. Lorraine rolled her eyes, a smirk flickering across her face. There's no need to raise your voice. It's family business. I glanced at Kevin, searching for some sign of solidarity. He simply shrugged, looking anywhere but at me. She doesn't have anywhere else to go, he muttered. Anger rose in my chest. So you just decide this without asking me? Kevin sighed, walking past me to grab a can of soda from the kitchen. Look, let's not make this a huge deal, okay? It's temporary. Lorraine settled herself on the couch, flipping through a magazine like she owned the place. I clenched my fists, resisting the urge to scream. Temporary? And how long is temporary exactly? Kevin opened the soda, taking a sip. We'll figure it out. She's family, Elena. I turned away, fighting the tears that threatened to spill. Nothing about this felt right. The house I had worked so hard to make our home was now invaded without a second thought. I glanced back at Kevin, hoping for a glimmer of understanding. Kevin, I need to talk to you, alone. He finally looked at me, his face a mix of annoyance and fatigue. Fine, he said, putting down his drink. Let's talk. We walked to the backyard, where the evening air did little to cool my anger. You can't just bring her here without any discussion, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Kevin rubbed the back of his neck. Elena, it's not that simple. She's my mother. I didn't want to sound heartless, but I felt cornered. I understand, but this is our home too. We're supposed to make these decisions together. He gave me a tired look. I thought you'd understand. The sting of those words cut deep. Kevin, that's not fair. I'm trying to understand, but you can't expect me to accept this without talking about it. He shrugged again, as if that single gesture could dissolve my frustration. Look, just give it time. She won't be a problem. I glared at him, unable to fathom his nonchalance. Won't be a problem. She's already taken over the living room. Kevin threw his hands up in surrender. I can't throw her out, Elena. That's all I'm saying. With that, he walked back inside, leaving me fuming in the backyard. The sinking realization dawned on me. My voice didn't matter. Kevin had made up his mind, and Lorraine had dug her heels in. As I stood there, I took a deep breath, my determination solidifying. I would not let this go uncontested. Stepping back inside, I shot a glare at Lorraine. She met my eyes with a cold smile. This is not over, I whispered, mainly to myself. The house, my sanctuary, had become a battleground, and the war had just begun. I can't believe this is happening, I muttered to myself as I left for work the next morning. My best friend Sandra called just as I pulled into the parking lot. Elena, how was your trip? She asked cheerfully. It was fine, but I came back to a nightmare. What do you mean? Her voice grew serious. Kevin's mom moved in, just like that. No discussion, no warning, I said, biting back my frustration. Sandra sighed. You've got to be kidding me. Didn't he even talk to you about it? Nope, it was all decided while I was gone. Sandra was quiet for a moment. You need to lay down some boundaries, Elena. This isn't okay. I know, I said, parking the car and grabbing my bag. It's just complicated. I get it. Just remember, you don't have to put up with this forever, she said, trying to reassure me. Entering the office, I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting back home. Memories flooded in about when Kevin and I first met at this very office. Kevin, the charming graphic designer, always had a way of making everyone laugh. Our romance had been quick and intense. We married after just a year of dating, certain we could handle anything together. Then Lorraine revealed her true colors. Sweet and supportive before the wedding, she turned critical and manipulative once the rings were on our fingers. Kevin, forever the peacemaker, never stood up to her. I'll never forget the first time she openly disapproved of me. Are you sure you can handle Kevin's work hours, Elena? Maybe you should rethink this career of yours, she said, smirking as if she was genuinely concerned. Of course, Kevin and I manage just fine, I had replied, masking my irritation. Kevin had shrugged the comment off, claiming she meant no harm. but the seeds of doubt she planted grew each day. Returning home that evening, I found Lorraine rearranging the kitchen. "What are you doing?" I couldn't hide my annoyance. "Just making it more practical. You had it all wrong," she replied nonchalantly. I clenched my jaw, taking a deep breath. "I like it the way it is." Lorraine's voice dripped with false sweetness. "Oh, sweetie, you'll see it's better this way." Stepping into the living room, I saw Kevin on his laptop. "Kevin, we need to talk, now." He looked up, clearly sensing the tension. "What is it?" "Lorraine is taking over the house. We need to set some boundaries." Kevin sighed, rubbing his temples. "Elena, can't you just try and get along with her? It's hard for her, too." I stared at him in disbelief. "Are you kidding me? She's acting like this place is hers." "She's just trying to help," he replied weakly. "Help? By undermining everything I do?" I snapped. Kevin stood up, frustration lining his face. "Why do you always have to blow things out of proportion?" Rare anger bubbled inside me. "Blow things out of proportion? You're seriously siding with her?" He threw his hands up. "I'm not taking sides, I just want some peace." Furious, I stormed out to the backyard. My home felt like a stranger's house, my voice unheard, my feelings disregarded. But I knew deep down this wasn't living. As the night fell, I steeled myself. This wouldn't be swept under the rug. Something had to change, and I would make sure of it. Kevin's passive nature had pushed me to the edge, but I wouldn't fall off. Not yet. Not without a fight. The days blurred into a nightmare. I barely recognized my own house. Lorraine's presence was overpowering. She critiqued everything I did, from how I cooked to how I decorated. Kevin stayed silent through it all, brushing off my concerns like dust on a shelf. One morning, as I sipped my coffee, Lorraine strutted into the kitchen. "Elena, I noticed you've been spending a lot on groceries. Maybe you should cut back a bit." I stared at her, biting my tongue until it nearly bled. "Lorraine, we buy what we need." She smirked, shaking her head. "I'd manage this household differently, but I guess it's your call." Just as I opened my mouth to retort, Kevin walked in. I turned to him. "Kevin, do you hear this?" He looked between us, clearly uncomfortable. "Mom's just trying to help." I slammed my cup down, coffee spilling. "Trying to help by undermining me?" Kevin sighed, the lines on his face deepening. "Why do you always have to make a scene?" Lorraine's eyes twinkled with satisfaction. She had him wrapped around her finger. Frustrated, I stormed out of the kitchen. The next day, while I was at work, I got a text from Kevin. "We need to talk tonight." Anxiety gnawed at me. When I got home, Lorraine's smug glance followed me as I walked into the living room. Kevin was sitting there, looking stern. "Elena, Mom needs money. I've already given her some, but she needs more." My jaw dropped. "She needs more. We have bills, Kevin." He rubbed his forehead. "I know, but she's family. She's in a tough spot." I turned to Lorraine, who was lounging on the couch, looking unbothered. "Can't she find a job or—" Lorraine cut me off. "I've done my fair share of work. It's time for my son to take care of me." My patience snapped. "Kevin, this is not right or fair. You're putting our future at risk." Kevin's face turned red. "She's my mother, Elena. She comes first." Tears stung my eyes as I realized where his loyalty lay. "What about us, Kevin? What about our life?" He stood up, clenching his fists. "Maybe you should think about being more supportive." I left the living room, heart pounding with anger and betrayal. The conversation kept replaying in my mind. Kevin's unwavering support for Lorraine and his blatant disregard for our needs. Sandra called that evening. "How are you holding up?" "Not well," I admitted. "Lorraine wants money now, and Kevin's ready to give it to her." Sandra's voice brimmed with outrage. "That's insane. You need to put your foot down, Elena." "It's not that easy," I sighed. "He won't listen to me." "Then make him listen. You can't keep sacrificing your happiness." Her words echoed in my mind long after we hung up. The next morning I confronted Kevin again. "We need to talk about finances. This has to stop." Kevin rolled his eyes. "We'll be fine." Desperation gripped me. "Kevin, you're jeopardizing everything we've worked for." He shrugged. "She's family. You're the one being unreasonable." Anger surged through me. This is my home too. I will not be pushed aside. Walking away from that conversation, I knew things had to change. I couldn't let Lorraine dictate our lives. And if Kevin refused to stand by me, I'd find a way to reclaim my power, no matter the cost. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready to fight for what was rightfully ours. The escalation had only just begun. I came home late from work one evening, hoping for some semblance of peace. Instead, I walked into Lorraine and Kevin in the middle of a heated discussion. "It's not done right, Kevin," Lorraine was saying. "Elena doesn't know how to manage this house properly." Kevin looked up as I entered, his expression shifting from annoyance to exasperation. "Mom thinks the house isn't clean enough," he said, as if that were the biggest problem we had. Lorraine turned to me, hands on her hips. "Elena, couldn't you at least try to keep this place decent?" I dropped my bag on the floor, barely containing my fury. "I have a full-time job, Lorraine. I can't spend every minute cleaning." Lorraine huffed. "When I was your age, I managed just fine." That was the last straw. "This isn't about cleaning. You just want to control everything." Kevin stepped between us, his voice rising. "Elena, calm down. Mom's just trying to help." "Help? By criticizing everything I do? This is my home, Kevin. Our home." Lorraine scoffed. "You're overreacting. Maybe if you learned some respect." Before she could finish, I cut her off. "Respect? You moved in unannounced, rearranged my kitchen, demanded money, and now you're criticizing how I maintain my home. How is that respectful?" Kevin's face turned red with frustration. "Elena, why can't you see that she's just looking out for us?" I could have screamed from the hopelessness of it all. "Looking out for us? She's making me feel like a guest in my own house." Lorraine threw her hands in the air. "If you're that unhappy, maybe you should leave." I stared at her, stunned. Turning to Kevin, I waited for him to defend me, but he remained silent. My heart sank. "Is that what you want too, Kevin? For me to leave?" He avoided my gaze, his silence louder than any words. Tears threatened, but I held them back. "Fine. If you want me to leave, just say it." Kevin finally spoke, but his words hit like a brick. "Maybe you need to learn some respect for family, or leave if you can't handle basic family expectations." The air was thick with tension as I turned on my heel and stormed out of the house. I needed space, air, anything but the walls that felt like they were closing in on me. Sandra's comforting voice was the only thing that made sense as I paced outside, phone pressed to my ear. "He actually said that?" she gasped. "Yes, basically told me to leave," I whispered, the hurt palpable. "Elena, you deserve better than this. If he won't see that, then maybe it's time to rethink things." Her words rang true, but they also scared me. Could I really walk away from 10 years with Kevin, from the home we built? When I finally came back inside, Kevin and Lorraine's voices could still be heard, low and conspiratorial. They didn't notice me slip upstairs, my mind swirling with conflicting thoughts. Lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. I knew I couldn't go on like this. Kevin's spinelessness and Lorraine's incessant meddling were driving me to the edge. Sleep didn't come easily that night, but as exhaustion finally took over, one thing was clear. I needed to stand up for myself. I couldn't let them trample over my life without consequence. The battle wasn't just Lorraine's intrusion, it was about reclaiming my own dignity and worth. Morning broke with a sense of grim determination. I had a conference trip coming up, and it felt like the last chance to find some perspective. Kevin was already at the kitchen table when I came downstairs. "We need to talk," he said, as if last night hadn't been a breaking point. "Not now, Kevin. I've got a plane to catch," I said, moving past him. He grabbed my arm gently. "We'll work this out, I promise." I looked at him, searching for sincerity. "We'll see about that." As I left the house, the weight of the impending decisions hung heavy, but I knew one thing for sure: change was coming, one way or another. The conference trip was a welcome escape. For a few days I immersed myself in work, trying to forget about the chaos at home. But as soon as I landed back at the airport, reality crashed back in. I got a text from Kevin. "We need to talk when you get home." Dread settled in my stomach as I walked through the door. Lorraine was in the kitchen, moving pots and pans around as if she could further assert her control over our space. "Welcome back," Lorraine said with a smirk. "Did you enjoy your trip?" "Spare me," I muttered, too tired to engage. Kevin was pacing in the living room. When he saw me, he stopped. "We need to talk now, Elena." I dropped my bags. "Fine, talk." He glanced uneasily at Lorraine before speaking. "Mom and I have been discussing our situation. We think you need to make some changes." "Changes?" I crossed my arms, ready for the next blow. Lorraine interjected. "You need to learn to respect family, and clearly, you're struggling with that." I felt like I was being gaslit. Respect goes both ways, Lorraine. You've done nothing but disrespect me since you got here. Kevin stepped in defensively. Mom's just trying to help us make this work. I couldn't hold back anymore. Kevin, are you even listening to yourself? She's tearing us apart. Lorraine put on her most innocent face. Oh, please, you're just blowing things out of proportion. I snapped. You're manipulating Kevin and trying to control our lives. What exactly is your endgame here? Kevin's face turned pale. Elena, stop. We're supposed to be a family. A family that respects each other, I shot back. And right now I feel like I've been completely disrespected and disregarded. Kevin's face contorted with frustration. Maybe you need to spend some time away to clear your head. I was stunned. Do you even hear what you're saying? You want me to leave my own home? Lorraine smirked, clearly enjoying the show. Maybe a little time apart would do you both some good. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Kevin broke it. Maybe she's right. I think it's best if you take some time to cool off. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of betrayal. If I leave, I'm not coming back until things change. Kevin looked away, unable to meet my gaze. Do what you need to do, Elena. I turned, grabbing my bags, and walked out the door. It wasn't until I was outside that the tears came. As heart-wrenching as it was also liberating. For too long I had tolerated being second to Lorraine's manipulations. Sandra was at her door before I even rang the bell. Elena, what's happened now? Kevin wants me to leave, I managed between sobs. He sided with Lorraine again. Sandra pulled me into a comforting hug. You've done the right thing. You deserve better. As days turned into a week, I settled into Sandra's spare bedroom. The sting of Kevin's betrayal was sharp, but the time away also gave me clarity. I began consulting with Mark, a trusted lawyer, discussing my options. During one of our meetings, Mark looked up from his papers. You know, Elena, the house is legally yours. I blinked, processing his words. What do you mean? Kevin never updated the deed after you purchased it. Legally, you hold the title. A spark of hope flickered. So I could. Yes, Mark confirmed. You have the power here. Use it wisely. Armed with this knowledge, I prepared for the next battle. Kevin and Lorraine needed a wake-up call, and I was more than ready to give it to them. My time of feeling powerless was over. It was time to reclaim what was rightfully mine. I returned home with a resolve I hadn't felt in years. As I walked through the front door, the silence struck me. It was clear Lorraine and Kevin knew something was up. I found them both in the living room, Kevin on the couch, Lorraine in the armchair. Both turned to face me as I entered. Kevin spoke first, his voice betraying his nervousness. Elena, where have you been? I didn't waste any time. Kevin, Lorraine, sit down. We need to talk. Lorraine's eyes narrowed. About what? Think you can come in here and start making demands? I ignored her, focusing on Kevin. This ends now, Kevin. Lorraine's constant meddling, the financial drain, everything. Kevin's brows furrowed. What are you saying? I'm saying this situation is unbearable. Lorraine's presence and your constant support of her over our marriage is unacceptable. Lorraine stood up, her face a mask of feigned innocence. Oh, I see. So now it's all my fault? Every part of it, I stated bluntly. I've tried to be reasonable, but you've taken over our home, criticized me constantly, and pushed me to the breaking point. Kevin sighed deeply. Elena, we've been over this. She's family. I took a deep breath. Well, here's the thing, Kevin. The house is in my name. Legally, I own this place. Both Kevin and Lorraine froze, their faces pale. What? Kevin muttered, disbelief painting his features. You heard me, and with that, I have the final say on who stays and who goes. Lorraine scoffed, trying to regain her composure. You wouldn't dare. I looked straight at Kevin. If you want to stay in this marriage, Lorraine needs to go. Now. Kevin stammered. Elena, you can't just... Yes, I can, I interrupted. This is my home, and I'm done being pushed around. Lorraine's eyes were on fire. You ungrateful little... Enough, I shouted. Leave, now. Kevin stood up, trying to placate. Elena, can't we discuss this? No, Kevin. I have tried to discuss, to compromise, but you both have taken advantage of my patience. He glanced at his mother, despair clouding his eyes. Mom, maybe it's best if you find somewhere else to stay for a while. Lorraine's face twisted in rage. What? You're kicking me out? Kevin looked down, avoiding her gaze. Maybe just for a little while, until things calm down. She turned to me, venom in her voice. You'll regret this. I met her look with defiance. No, Lorraine, I think this is exactly what I need to do. Kevin's shoulders slumped as Lorraine stormed off to pack her things. He finally looked at me, desperation in his eyes. Elena, I cut him off. Kevin, I love you. But your blind allegiance to your mother has pushed us to this breaking point. Things need to change or we're over. Lorraine brushed past us with her bags, shooting daggers with her eyes. This isn't the end, Elena. Remember that. I didn't flinch. Goodbye, Lorraine. After she slammed the door, the house fell into an eerie silence. Kevin and I stood there, the distance between us growing. This wasn't going to be fixed overnight. If Kevin couldn't adjust, I knew I'd have to walk away for good. For now, though, a heavy weight lifted from my shoulders. The battle wasn't completely won, but the most reinforcing battle had been, and I felt stronger for it. The next steps were uncertain, but I was ready to face them head-on. Kevin was unusually quiet in the days following Lorraine's departure. Tension hung in the air like a storm about to break. His silence was heavy, his movements slow, and it was clear he was struggling to process everything. One evening, while we were having dinner, he finally spoke up. Elena, I never wanted it to get this bad. I looked at him, wanting to believe there was genuine regret. Kevin, it's not just about wanting or not wanting. It's about actions and consequences. You've allowed your mother to disrespect me for years. He sighed, pushing his food around on his plate. I know, but I didn't know how to stop her. By standing up to her, Kevin, by putting our marriage first, I said, my voice firmer than I felt. You're right, he admitted, sadly. I've been a coward. The admission felt like a small victory, but I wasn't about to let him off easy. Kevin, I need you to understand that things have to change. If they don't, we won't survive this. He looked up, his eyes pleading. I'll do whatever it takes, Elena. Just tell me what to do. I took a deep breath. We need professional help, counseling, and you need to rebuild the trust that's been shattered. Kevin nodded, slowly. I'll make an appointment tomorrow. The next few days were filled with cold, practical coexistence. We barely spoke outside of necessity. I needed space to heal, and Kevin seemed to need time to regain his footing. Then, another bombshell hit. Lorraine started calling, leaving messages. Kevin ignored them at first, but one evening he played them all at once, his face pale. Lorraine's voice was shrill and desperate. Kevin, I need you to come here. Things are bad. I don't know what to do. Kevin turned to me, eyes wide with helplessness. She's in trouble, Elena? I crossed my arms, feeling my resolve harden. She's been in trouble of her own making. She dug this hole, Kevin. I know, but she's still my mother, he said, his voice shaking. I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar sting of frustration. If you go to her now, Kevin, you're undoing any progress we've made. He froze, torn between guilt and duty. But if I don't go, what kind of son am I? One who finally sets boundaries. One who respects his wife, I replied. Kevin's shoulders drooped. What do you want me to do? This is a test for you, Kevin. You need to choose us. If you don't, I'll know where we stand, I said, each word a heavy verdict. Kevin slowly nodded. All right, I won't go. The next day I consulted Mark again, finalizing some practical matters regarding the house. When I returned home, Kevin was waiting. I didn't respond to her, he said quietly, just like you asked. A small part of me felt relief. That's a start, Kevin. And I made an appointment with the counselor for both of us, he added. I nodded, feeling cautiously optimistic. Good. We need this. Later, as we sat silently in the living room, Kevin finally broke the quiet. I regret everything, Elena. Letting her come between us was the worst mistake of my life. I looked at him, sensing some genuine change. This is your chance to prove it. He reached out, taking my hand. I promise, Elena, I'll do better. As the days turned into weeks, we attended counseling sessions, slowly working through years of built-up resentment and betrayal. It wasn't easy, and I wasn't sure if Kevin and I would fully recover, but for the first time, there was a glimmer of hope. However, I couldn't shake the feeling that Lorraine wasn't done with her schemes, and I remained vigilant, ready for whatever her next move would be. This battle wasn't over, but I was no longer willing to be a passive participant in my own life. I was prepared to fight for my happiness, no matter the cost. The decision to move out temporarily was my last resort. Kevin and I had made progress in counseling, but I needed a fresh start to clear my mind and regain control. I found a small, furnished apartment a few blocks away, allowing me to maintain some distance while still keeping an eye on the home front. The day I left, Kevin looked distraught. "Elena, I understand why you need to do this, but it feels so final." "It's not forever, Kevin. It's just for now," I said, mustering as much reassurance as I could. "I need space to heal." He nodded, but his eyes were filled with worry. "I'll be here when you're ready." As I settled into my new place, I threw myself into work, excelling at the marketing firm and networking with new clients. One evening, I received a call from Nathan Parker, an old friend who had just launched a startup. "Elena, I've been following your career for a while now. I'd love for you to join my team," he said enthusiastically. Excitement bubbled up. "That sounds amazing, Nathan. Let's meet and discuss it further." Meanwhile, Lorraine's life was unraveling. Rumors reached me through mutual acquaintances. She and Kevin had been forced to move into a rundown apartment, their finances in tatters without my contributions. It seemed karma was catching up to her. Several weeks passed before Kevin called. "Elena, can we meet? I need to talk to you." We met at a small cafe. Kevin looked worn out but sincere. "I've missed you. The house feels empty without you." "I've missed you too," I admitted, though cautiously. "But have things changed?" He sighed deeply. "Lorraine's in over her head. She's been manipulating me for so long, and I finally see it. I've made arrangements for her to move in with a relative out of state." I raised an eyebrow. "Really?" "Yes," he confirmed. "I want to make things right, Elena. I want us to be happy again." A part of me felt relief, but I also knew I had to protect my heart. "Kevin, it'll take time for me to believe things have truly changed." He nodded understandingly. "I'm willing to wait." As I walked back to my apartment, I mulled over our conversation. Was it possible Kevin had really changed? Only time would tell. The next day, I met with Nathan. The startup's energy was infectious, and I accepted his offer to join the team as their head of marketing. It was a fresh, exciting challenge and a chance to build something new. Months flew by. Work was fulfilling, and Kevin and I maintained cautious communication. Finally, one afternoon, I received the news I'd been expecting. Lorraine had moved out of state. Kevin called me later, his voice hopeful. "The house is ours again, Elena? Can we start over?" I hesitated a moment before answering. "Yes, Kevin. We can give it another try." Moving back into the house felt surreal. It was as if a dark cloud had lifted, and the space was filled with possibilities once more. Kevin worked hard to rebuild trust, and the counseling sessions became a solid foundation for our new beginning. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, Kevin turned to me. "Thank you for giving us another chance, Elena. I won't let you down." Looking at him, I saw a genuine change and commitment in his eyes. "I believe you, Kevin. Let's make the most of this." Life gradually became stable and fulfilling again. My career at Nathan's startup soared, and Kevin and I rediscovered our love and partnership. Lorraine's absence was a blessing that allowed us to focus on us without the constant undercurrent of manipulation. Occasionally, I'd hear whispers about Lorraine struggling in her new living situation. She had burned many bridges and found herself isolated and vulnerable. It may have been karma's way of balancing the scales. As time went on, Kevin and I thrived, stronger and more resilient than ever. The journey had been long and painful, but the light at the end was worth the battle. Now our lives felt rooted in mutual respect and genuine love, standing tall amidst the trials we'd conquered together. "Greg, this is the last time you'll open our home to strangers without asking me." I dropped my bag on the kitchen counter, eyes blazing at the scene before me. "Come on, it's just Rob. He's like a brother." Greg looked up from his beer, a lazy grin plastered on his face. "You know how my day was. I just wanted peace tonight." My tone wasn't just firm, it was a warning. Rob leaned back on the couch, clearly sensing the tension, but choosing to stay silent. He sipped on his beer, eyes flicking between Greg and me. "It's not a big deal, Meredith. It's not like I threw a party," Greg chuckled. "No," I said, crossing my arms, "but it's the principle, respecting each other's space." Greg sighed, standing up and walking over to the fridge. He grabbed another beer, deliberately ignoring my feelings. My blood boiled hotter. "This isn't the first time, Greg. I ran my hand through my hair, trying to control my anger. "I was really looking forward to my show tonight." Greg popped open the beer, avoiding eye contact. "You can still watch it." I looked at the clock, knowing the episode had already started. And how am I supposed to focus with you two laughing and chatting? Greg still didn't get it. Or maybe he didn't want to. Rob's here for one night. Chill out. Rob, sensing a storm brewing, finally spoke. Maybe I should leave. No, Rob, I said sharply, not taking my eyes off Greg. You're here now. Let's just get through it. Greg shrugged and took a lazy swig of his beer. See? No harm done. I seethed as I walked past them, heading to the bedroom. I couldn't deal with this again. It wasn't about Rob or anyone specific. It was about respect, something Greg seemed to lack when it came to our shared space. I closed the door behind me and sunk onto the bed. Turning on the TV, the familiar intro to my true crime show filled the room, but my mind was elsewhere. Greg's disregard wasn't new. This pattern had been going on for months. 10 minutes into the episode, Greg knocked on the door and entered before I could respond. Meredith, seriously? Let's not fight over this. I muted the TV, frustration boiling over. Greg, it's not about Rob. It's about you not taking my feelings seriously. Can't you see that? He gave a bad imitation of a remorseful look and sat down next to me. I guess I didn't think it was that big of a deal. You didn't think, I repeated, voice trembling not with sadness but with sheer anger. That's the whole problem. This is our home. You can't just invite people over without asking. Greg stayed silent. I continued, not letting him off the hook. I need you to understand how much this matters to me. He finally met my eyes, a flicker of realization but also resistance. All right, I get it. I'll ask next time. The way he said it, I wasn't convinced. It felt like a placation, a way to end the argument for now. Promise me, I demanded. Promise you'll respect our space. Yeah, he nodded, but the nonchalance in his eyes worried me. Sure. I watched him leave the room, the door closing with a quiet click. I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, knowing this issue was far from over. It was about more than just friends and unexpected visits. It was about respect, and that was something Greg seemed to have a hard time grasping. As the muted TV flickered shadows on the walls, I realized the real struggle had just begun. The next morning, I woke up early, the weight of yesterday still heavy on my mind. Greg was snoring lightly next to me, oblivious to the turmoil he had caused. I didn't want to start the day with more arguments, but I knew that we needed to have a real conversation about last night. I got dressed and went downstairs, choosing to wait for Greg to wake up. I busied myself with making coffee, the aroma filling the kitchen and providing some comfort. About an hour later, Greg finally stumbled into the kitchen, scratching his head and yawning. "Morning," he mumbled. I didn't respond immediately, focusing instead on pouring coffee into 2 mugs. Finally, I turned to him. "We need to talk." Greg looked at me with a hint of annoyance. "About what? Rob's gone now. Can't we just let it go?" "No, Greg, we can't just let it go." I handed him a mug, my eyes hard. "You keep inviting people over without asking me. Last night was just another example of you not respecting my space." He sighed dramatically. "You're blowing this out of proportion, Meredith." "Am I?" I challenged, setting my mug down with a thud. "Every time this happens, you brush it off like it's nothing. But it's not nothing to me. What do you want me to do? Start sending you calendar invites?" Greg scoffed. "I want you to think about me before making decisions that affect both of us." "Is that too much to ask?" Greg rolled his eyes. "You know what your problem is? You're too rigid. You need to relax. Life isn't just about schedules and rules." I felt my fists clench. "You're missing the point. This is about respect, Greg. Respect for our home and for each other. I'm not asking for much." He took a sip of his coffee, avoiding my eyes. "I'll try to remember next time, all right? Can we drop it now?" I didn't believe him. His dismissive tone told me all I needed to know. "This isn't the first time this has happened, Greg. It's becoming a pattern, and it's not just about last night. There have been plenty of other times." I paused, expecting him to argue, but he stayed silent. Emboldened, I continued, "Every time you do this, it makes me feel like you don't care about my needs, like I'm invisible." Greg finally looked up, irritation clear on his face. "Are you seriously going to make this into a big deal? It was one night, Meredith." I shook my head, tears of frustration welling up. "That's exactly it. You always think it's just one night, one small thing, but those small things keep piling up." He set his mug down more forcefully than necessary. "Fine, from now on, I'll ask. Happy? No, because I don't believe you mean it, I replied, voice trembling but firm. I need you to understand that this is serious. If you keep ignoring my feelings, this won't work. Greg stared at me, seemingly taken aback by my ultimatum. You're really serious, aren't you? Yes, Greg. I am. I turned away, needing to get some distance. Think about what I've said. As I walked out of the kitchen, I knew that this wasn't the end of our argument, but at least I had made it clear that things needed to change. I came home from work later that week, hoping for a quiet evening, but the sound of laughter hit me as soon as I opened the door. Greg was sitting in the living room with two of his friends, beers on the coffee table, the TV blaring. Hey, you're home, Greg said, barely looking up. I forced a smile, trying to hide my frustration. I see we have more guests. One of his friends, Kevin, nodded at me. Hey, Meredith. Greg said it was cool to come over. I gritted my teeth, shooting a look at Greg. Can I talk to you in the kitchen for a second? Greg sighed but followed me. Once we were out of earshot, I turned to him. What did we just talk about last week? He shrugged, clearly annoyed. What now? I asked you to inform me before inviting people over. You promised, Greg. I forgot. It's not a big deal, he said, crossing his arms defensively. It is a big deal to me, I said, my voice rising. You keep ignoring my feelings. It's like you don't even care. He rolled his eyes. You're overreacting, Meredith. We're just hanging out. No, I'm not overreacting. You keep doing this, and it's disrespectful. I need peace when I come home. Greg leaned against the counter, shaking his head. You're acting like a control freak. Lighten up. I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. This isn't about control. It's about respect. This is our home. Both of us need a say. Whatever, he muttered, already walking back to his friends. I stood there, feeling the sting of his words. This wasn't going anywhere. I knew then that Greg had no intention of changing. The realization settled heavily in my chest. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, while the muffled sounds of their laughter and chatter seeped through the walls. It was hopeless. Greg didn't care about my needs or the impact of his actions on our relationship. As the night dragged on, my resolve hardened. If he wouldn't respect our space, I would make sure to reclaim it myself. The following morning, Greg was already up and about, seemingly oblivious to the argument from the night before. I found him in the kitchen, scrolling through his phone. We need to talk, I said, stepping in. Again? Greg sighed, not even looking up. Yes, again. Because things haven't changed. You keep dismissing me, Greg, and it's not okay. He finally looked up, irritation evident. What do you want from me, Meredith? I said I'd try to remember. Can you just drop it? No, I can't just drop it. If you can't respect this one simple request, what else won't you respect? Greg threw his hands up. Fine. You want respect? Respect works both ways. Stop nagging me about every little thing. I took a step back, hurt by his outburst. I'm not nagging. I'm asking for basic consideration. Greg scoffed. You know what? Maybe you're too sensitive. Maybe that's the problem. I felt a lump in my throat, but pushed it down. Maybe, but that doesn't excuse your behavior. He stared at me, unyielding. I'll do better. This conversation is over. But as he stormed out, I knew it wasn't. This was far from over. Respect wasn't something you demanded. It was earned. And if Greg couldn't see that, then I needed to take steps to protect myself and my peace. There was no turning back now. Greg had shown his true colors, and it was time for me to act. The days moved forward in an uncomfortable truce. Greg seemed more irritable, his attitude flaring up without warning. I, on the other hand, sank deeper into planning. The next incident had to be handled decisively. One evening after work, I decided to put my foot down. Greg, we need to talk, I said as he lounged on the couch, aimlessly flipping through channels. He huffed, but muted the TV. What is it this time? I sat down across from him, eyes unwavering. No more uninvited guests without informing me first. Greg smirked, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Sure. I'll send out a notification next time, he joked. I leaned forward, seriousness radiating from me. I mean it, Greg, this is non-negotiable. We are in this together. Respect my wishes or we will have a serious problem. He gave a nonchalant shrug. Fine, no more surprises. Happy now? You promise? I pressed. Yeah, I promise, he said, waving me off. The following week, the atmosphere felt lighter initially. Maybe, just maybe, he'd finally understood. But deep down, I remained skeptical. Friday came, and as soon as I walked through the door, the sound of loud music and laughter greeted me. My heart sank. "Greg!" I shouted over the noise. He sauntered over, a drink in his hand, smiling like he owned the place. "Hey, babe, welcome home. Great timing." I glared at him, fury building. "What is this, Greg? We talked about this." "It's just a small get-together," he said, as if it explained everything. Don't be such a buzzkill." "Small get-together? There are at least 10 people here. This isn't what we agreed on," I said, my voice trembling with anger. Greg took a sip of his drink, unbothered. "Relax, Meredith. It's the weekend. Just have a drink and join us." I shook my head, feeling the last straw break. "This is it, Greg. I can't take this anymore." He laughed, his tone mocking. Don't be dramatic. It's just a party." I turned on my heel and stormed out, heading straight to our bedroom. As the door shut behind me, I picked up my phone and called the divorce lawyer I had researched weeks before. It was time to take action. Over the next few days, I began to quietly prepare. I gathered documents, bank statements, anything that might be useful. I stayed out of Greg's way, avoiding unnecessary confrontation. But the tension was palpable. One evening, Greg confronted me. "You've been weirdly quiet lately. What's going on?" I looked at him dispassionately. "Just thinking about a lot of things." "Are you still upset about the party?" "Meredith, you really need to let it go." "I can't, Greg. It's not just the party. It's everything. This isn't working anymore." He frowned, confusion turning into anger. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I need respect, and you're clearly incapable of giving it. I'm done." Greg laughed, though it was hollow and uneasy. "You're bluffing." I faced him, resolute. "No, I'm not. I spoke to a lawyer." The color drained from his face. "A lawyer? Are you insane?" "No, just tired. Tired of not being heard, of not being respected. This isn't a game, Greg. It's my life, and I'm taking it back." Greg's expression turned dark. "You'll regret this, Meredith." But as I walked away, the only thing I felt was an overwhelming sense of clarity. There was no turning back. My next steps were firmly in place. Coming home one evening, I hoped for quiet. Instead, I walked into chaos. Music blared, voices echoed, the unmistakable signs of another party. My stomach clenched, anger rising. I pushed through the mess of shoes and coats littering the hallway. "Greg!" I called out. No response. I found him in the living room, surrounded by friends, drink in hand, the party in full swing. He looked up and saw me, a slow smirk spreading across his face. "Meredith, join us. Why don't you?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Greg, we need to talk. Now." Ignoring my tone, he laughed. "Everyone, meet the boss of the house," he said, clearly amused at his own joke. People glanced at me, some sympathetic, others just curious. I felt a mix of embarrassment and fury. "Greg, now!" He shrugged, setting his drink down and following me into the kitchen. As soon as the door closed behind us, I turned to him, eyes blazing. "What is this? We talked about this. No more parties." He leaned against the counter, unbothered. "You're being dramatic. It's just a few friends." "No, Greg. This is disrespectful and you keep doing it." I could feel my hands shaking. Greg's expression turned cold. "You're blowing this way out of proportion. It's just one night." "One night?" I scoffed. "This is the 3rd time this month. I've had enough." "You need to chill, Meredith," he replied, dismissive. "Life can't be all rules and schedules." "I can't live like this, Greg. I've already spoken to a lawyer," I said, my voice firm. His face twisted in surprise, then anger. "A lawyer? For what? This?" "Yes, Greg, this," I said, gesturing around. "It's clear you don't care about my feelings. You promised to respect our home, and you broke that promise." He took a step closer, sneering. "You're really going to throw away our marriage over a couple of parties?" "Yes, I am. Because it's not just the parties. It's the constant disrespect, the disregard for my feelings. I'm done." He looked at me, eyes narrowing. "You think you can just walk away? Good luck, Meredith. You'll regret this." I didn't flinch. "Maybe, but it can't be worse than this." Without another word, I walked past him, grabbed my phone, and went to the bedroom. My hands were shaking as I called the lawyer again, setting up a meeting to finalize the papers. I couldn't keep doing this. Later that night, after everyone left, Greg stumbled into the bedroom. "So that's it? We're done?" He slurred, clearly drunk. "Yes, Greg, we're done," I said, not looking up from packing a small bag. "I'm leaving tonight." He grabbed my arm, making me look at him. "You won't survive without me." I pulled my arm free. "Watch me." Leaving the house felt surreal, like stepping out of a nightmare. As I drove away, the weight on my chest started to lift. This was just the beginning, but it was my beginning. There was no going back. My next chapter started now. I woke up early, the sun barely breaking through the curtains. The divorce papers lay on the nightstand, staring at me like a challenge waiting to be met. Today was the day. I took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of resolve and anxiety. By the time Greg woke up and stumbled into the kitchen, I was ready. I placed the papers on the table, my heart pounding. "Good morning," Greg groaned, not yet noticing the documents. "Morning," I replied, my voice calm. "We need to talk." He finally saw the papers and froze. "What's this?" "Divorce papers," I said with finality. "I'm serious, Greg. You need to sign them." His eyes widened with a mix of shock and anger. "You're really doing this?" "Yes, I am," I said. "You had every chance to change. I need respect and peace, and you can't give me that." He grabbed the papers and waved them at me. "This is insane. You're throwing away everything over a few arguments?" "It's not just a few arguments, Greg. It's about trust, respect, all the things you seem to lack." He slapped the papers back on the table. "You'll regret this, Meredith. You think you won, but you haven't." I held my ground, my voice steady. "This isn't about winning or losing. It's about my peace and my future." He stared at me for a long moment before finally slumping into a chair. "Fine. You want your precious respect? Here," he said, grabbing a pen and scrawling his signature angrily. "Take it." A wave of relief washed over me, but I remained composed. "Thank you." As he handed the papers back, his eyes darkened. "Don't think for a second that this is over. You'll see." The threat hung in the air, but I didn't flinch. "Goodbye, Greg," I said, turning away and heading out the door. The fresh air hitting my face felt liberating. The next few days flew by. I moved into a small, cozy apartment across town. It was a fresh start, a new beginning that I desperately needed. I dedicated myself to my work, pouring my energy into something constructive. My colleagues noticed the shift, offering support and encouragement. During a quiet evening, as I was organizing my thoughts, my phone rang. It was Dorothy, Greg's mother. "Meredith, we need to talk," she said, her voice firm. "Of course, Dorothy. What's going on?" "Come over to the house. We need to discuss this in person." I drove over, nervous but determined. Dorothy greeted me at the door, her expression serious. "I heard about the divorce," she said as we sat down in the living room. "Yes, it was a difficult decision, but necessary." She nodded, her gaze piercing. "I need you to know something about Greg. His father, he had similar issues. I never intervened, thinking he would change, but he never did." I was stunned, but I listened intently. "Greg has been irresponsible and manipulative, even with money. He's accrued debts in your name and drained the joint account." My stomach clenched. "How could he do this?" Dorothy sighed, eyes filled with regret. "I thought he'd grow out of it. Apparently I was wrong." I felt a mix of anger and betrayal. "What do I do now?" Dorothy reached out, taking my hand. "I stand with you on this. We need to set things right. I'll help in any way I can." Her support was a lifeline. Together, we devised a plan to confront Greg and hold him accountable. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life and ensuring such deceit wouldn't go unpunished. As I drove back to my apartment later that night, a sense of determination settled over me. Greg wasn't going to get away with this. The fight was far from over, but I wasn't alone anymore. I stood outside Greg's apartment, my heart pounding with a mix of anxiety and determination. Dorothy's words echoed in my mind, stealing my resolve. Today was the day I confronted Greg with the financial deceit he'd been hiding. I knocked firmly. A moment later, the door swung open. Greg, looking disheveled, stared at me in surprise. "Meredith? What the hell are you doing here?" "We need to talk," I said, pushing past him and into the apartment. Dorothy followed, her presence a silent support. Greg closed the door, clearly annoyed. "What's this about?" "I found out about the debts, Greg. The ones you racked up in my name," I said bluntly, eyes locked on his. His face went pale, but then he laughed, a nervous, mocking sound. "Oh, come on. You're overreacting. They're just a few charges." Dorothy stepped forward, her expression stern. "Don't lie, Greg. We have the evidence." Greg's eyes flickered with anger. "So what? You're here to gang up on me? Make me the bad guy?" "You are the bad guy," I said, keeping my voice level. "You betrayed my trust, and now you need to own up to it." He sneered, crossing his arms. "And if I don't, then we'll take legal action. Fraud is a serious crime, Greg, Dorothy said, her tone unyielding. Greg's defiance wavered. He looked between us, his bravado starting to crack. Fine. What do you want? Repay every cent you took from the joint account. Clear all debts in my name, I demanded. And I want it in writing, he scoffed. You think I have that kind of money just lying around? Dorothy stepped closer, eyes blazing. Then sell your assets, figure it out. You created this mess, you will fix it. Greg's face contorted with frustration and fear. You're ruining my life, Meredith. No, Greg, I said quietly. You ruined mine. I'm just taking it back. He glared at me, then at Dorothy. You both can't do this. Dorothy's voice was calm but firm. We already have. I've spoken to a lawyer too. If you don't comply, they'll take it from here. Greg's shoulders slumped. He looked defeated, a shadow of the man who had once thought he had all the power. Fine. I'll do it. Anything to get you off my back. Good, I said, relief washing over me. I'll have the paperwork ready by the end of the week. Sign it, and we'll be done. We turned to leave, but Greg called out. Meredith, wait. I paused, not looking back. What is it, Greg? I'm sorry, he said, his voice softer, though still tinged with bitterness. I turned around, meeting his eyes. Too late for that, Greg. Actions have consequences. I hope you learn from this. Dorothy and I walked out, the weight of confrontation lifting slightly. As we reached my car, she turned to me, her expression softening. You did well in there. Thanks to you, I said, gratitude filling my voice. I couldn't have done it alone. She nodded. Now focus on your future. Don't let him drag you down again. Driving away, I felt an unfamiliar sense of peace. The battle was far from over, but I had allies. Greg's manipulations had come to light, and I was taking control of my life. A sense of empowerment surged within me. This was just the beginning of my journey towards reclaiming my happiness. Moving out of Greg's shadow felt like stepping into the sunlight after years in the dark. I settled into my new apartment, finding comfort in the quiet simplicity of my own space. There were no more unexpected parties, no more shouting matches, just peace. One evening, as I was settling into my new home routine, my phone rang. It was my lawyer, Sarah. Meredith, I have some good news, she said, her voice calm but decisive. We've settled the financial issues with Greg. He's agreed to repay everything. A wave of relief washed over me. Thank you, Sarah. This means so much. Of course, she replied. We'll make sure he complies with the agreement. Don't worry about a thing. Hanging up, a deep sense of completion settled over me. But I knew that Greg wouldn't make it easy. A few weeks later, I received a call from an unknown number. Picking up, I was greeted by Greg's voice, strained and desperate. Meredith, please, can we talk? He pleaded. What is it, Greg? I kept my tone flat, emotions in check. I'm struggling. I don't know how to deal with all this, selling the house, repaying debts. It's too much, he said, voice cracking slightly. That's the consequence of your actions, Greg. You brought this upon yourself, I replied, feeling a pang of pity but quickly pushing it aside. Can we at least meet up? Just to talk things over? He asked, desperation clear in his tone. No, Greg. We're done. The papers are signed, and the agreement is in place. I have nothing more to say to you, I said firmly. You can't be this cold, Meredith. I need help, he tried again. I helped you for too long, Greg. Now you have to help yourself, I said, hanging up before he could respond. I knew his plea was another attempt to manipulate me, to drag me back into his web of chaos, but I was beyond that now. My focus was on healing, rebuilding, and moving forward. Dorothy visited me a few days later, bringing over a housewarming gift. How's the new place? She asked, looking around. It's perfect. Peaceful, I said, smiling genuinely. I'm glad to hear that, she said, sighing. Greg called me too. He's struggling. I know, I replied. He called me asking for help. She shook her head. He needs to learn responsibility. This is the only way. I agree, I said. Thank you for your support, Dorothy. I couldn't have done this without you. She smiled, taking my hand. You're strong, Meredith. Don't ever doubt that. As days turned into weeks, Greg's situation worsened. Forced to sell assets to pay back the debts, his life of reckless abandon came crashing down. I watched from a distance, detached, as he scrambled to pick up the pieces. In contrast, my life took a turn for the better. Work became my sanctuary, a place where I could channel my energy into something productive. My colleagues noticed the change, often complimenting my renewed focus and determination. One day, Sarah called again with the final update. Greg has completed the payments. Everything's settled now. Thank you, Sarah, I said, feeling truly free for the first time in years. After the call, I took a moment to reflect. Greg was a chapter of my life that had closed. Now it was time to write new ones, filled with peace, respect, and self-love. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over my new apartment, I felt a profound sense of liberation. The darkness of the past was behind me, and the future was bright with possibilities. Greg might still reach out, but his calls would go unanswered. I had reclaimed my life, and it was mine to cherish. Kayla, why do you look so lost? Are you okay? Todd's warm breath mixed with the frosty air. His concern seemed genuine, but I could feel the tears threatening to spill. Forcing a smile, I answered, just thinking. Let's go home and enjoy the stew I've been preparing. As we walked, the city around us bustled in Christmas cheer. The streets were lined with twinkling lights and families enjoying the season. I clung to Todd's arm, dreading the evening ahead. Our apartment, though small, was cozy and warm. Todd shrugged off his coat and tossed it over the couch, then headed straight for the kitchen. He lifted the lid on the stew pot, inhaling deeply. Smells good, he remarked, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. I nodded, placing freshly baked bread on the table. We sat down to eat, but the tension in the room was palpable. Todd's initial warmth had faded, replaced by a cold demeanor I recognized all too well. I focused on my bowl, hoping we could get through the meal without incident. Did you see that new couple moving in next door? Todd asked abruptly. Caught off guard, I nodded again. They seemed nice, I said, trying to sound casual. Seem nice? Todd's voice hardened. You talked to them without telling me first? I just said hello, Todd. It wasn't a big deal. I kept my voice calm, my hands nervously gripping my spoon. It is a big deal. I told you to always tell me when you talk to people. He glared at me, and I felt a familiar chill creep in. His control over me had grown stronger over the years. I used to believe his intentions were protective, born out of love. But now, sitting across from him, I saw the truth, an illusion of perfection masking a man who thrived on power and control. After dinner, Todd retreated to the living room, leaving me to clean up. I could hear the TV blaring in the background, but I stayed in the kitchen, scrubbing dishes with a focus that helped numb my thoughts. The water was scalding, but I welcomed the pain. It was a distraction. Kayla, Todd's voice cut through my trance. I quickly dried my hands and walked into the living room. He was on the couch, remote in hand, eyes glued to the screen. Yes, I asked softly. Bring me a beer. I headed to the fridge, grabbed a can and handed it to him. He didn't look at me, his focus was solely on the game. I stood there for a moment, waiting for some acknowledgement, some sign that he saw me. But nothing came. I was invisible to him, a mere shadow in the background of his life. Finding my voice, I said, I'm going to bed, Todd. He grunted in response, and I turned away, heading to our bedroom. As I lay in the dark, memories of happier times bubbled up. Nana's comforting words, her wisdom about finding happiness beyond the darkness. I clung to those memories tightly, using them as a shield against the creeping despair. With Nana's words echoing in my mind, I made a silent vow. Somehow, I would find my happiness. I wouldn't let this cold, controlling life define me. As I drifted off to sleep, the city's twinkling lights were now a distant memory, replaced by the suffocating walls of our apartment and the man who trapped me within them. Little did Todd know his grip was not as strong as he thought. And one day, he would learn that the hard way. No hot sauce? Seriously, Kayla? You can't even handle a simple grocery list. Todd's voice boomed through our small apartment, his face flushed with anger. I flinched, trying to keep my composure. I'm sorry, Todd, I must have forgotten. I'll get it tomorrow. Forget it. You always forget. What's the point of you if you can't do anything right? His words stung, each one a jab at my already bruised spirit. I nodded silently, refusing to let him see how his words cut me. Instead, I busied myself setting the table for breakfast. Todd stormed out of the kitchen, his footsteps heavy on the wooden floor. As I poured the coffee, Nana's voice echoed in my head, her comforting presence always a source of strength. You'll face struggles, but you'll find happiness beyond the darkness. I wished she was here now. I could almost see her sitting at the small round table, her kind eyes filled with wisdom. But those days were gone. and I was left to navigate this overwhelming loneliness. Todd's job kept him out of the apartment during the day, which was my only solace. I planned to visit Nana today, hoping her familiar scent of lavender and old books would offer some relief. In the afternoon, I grabbed my coat and headed to Nana's house, the cold air biting at my cheeks. Her home, a small, cozy haven, welcomed me with open arms. As I stepped inside, the warmth enveloped me, and for a brief moment, I felt safe. "Kayla, there's my beautiful girl," Nana greeted me with a gentle hug. "Come, sit down, have some tea." We sat at her modest kitchen table, the steam rising from our mugs. I watched Nana as she moved around, her frail frame a stark contrast to the powerhouse of strength she embodied. "How's it going, dear?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. I hesitated. "It's been hard, Nana. Sometimes I feel so alone." Nana reached across the table, her hands gripping mine with surprising strength. "I've always told you, Kayla, you'll face struggles, but you have a fire in you. You'll find happiness. Remember that." I nodded, absorbing her words like a sponge, desperate for any bit of hope. As we talked, memories of my childhood flooded back. Sundays spent baking cookies with Nana, her laughter filling the air. She was my rock, the one constant in a world spinning out of control. After a long afternoon of sharing stories and sipping tea, I felt lighter somehow. Nana's unwavering belief in me sparked a glimmer of hope. I hugged her tightly before leaving, her soft voice a whisper in my ear. "Stay strong, Kayla. Better days are coming." Back at the apartment, the coldness hit me as soon as I stepped inside. Todd was sprawled on the couch, a beer in his hand, eyes glued to the TV screen. "Where have you been?" he demanded without looking up. "Visited Nana," I replied, hanging my coat. "Well, it's about time you got home. Make sure you don't forget the hot sauce tomorrow." I swallowed my frustration, nodding silently. As I prepared dinner, Nana's words played over in my mind, a silent chant to keep me going. Better days are coming, I told myself over and over, clinging to that flicker of hope. Todd's grip might be suffocating, but Nana's wisdom gave me strength. Somehow, I would find the courage to break free. One day, Todd would realize that his control was slipping, and my resilience would be his downfall. I awoke the next morning, feeling the weight of yesterday's visit to Nana still lingering. Her words cycled through my mind, giving me a faint sense of strength, but Todd's looming presence was a constant reminder of my reality. By midday, after completing my chores, I decided to head back to Nana's. Her home was my sanctuary, the only place where I felt any semblance of peace. I slipped out quietly, not wanting to wake Todd, who was sprawled on the couch, snoring lightly from last night's binge. Arriving at Nana's, I instantly felt calmer. She greeted me with her usual warmth, pulling me into a tight embrace. "You look tired, dear. Come and sit down," she said, leading me to the kitchen. We settled at the table, and she poured us both a cup of tea. The familiarity of her actions was comforting. "Nana, I've been thinking a lot about what you said," I admitted, tracing my finger along the edge of the cup, "about facing struggles and finding happiness." "Good," she replied, her eyes meeting mine with a knowing look. "Remember, Kayla, you'll find happiness beyond the darkness." I nodded, feeling the resolve build up inside me. "Thank you, Nana. I don't know what I'd do without you." "You'll find your way, Kayla, although the path might be hard." Feeling lighter, I left Nana's house and returned to our apartment. The weight of Todd's presence hit me immediately upon entering. He was awake now, sitting at the table with a scowl etched on his face. "What took you so long?" he demanded, his eyes narrowing. "I was visiting Nana again," I explained, setting my bag down. "You're always running off there. Maybe you should move in with her," he sneered. Ignoring his comment, I went to the kitchen to start dinner. The silence was thick, filled with unspoken tensions. I could feel Todd's eyes boring into my back as I prepared the meal. Later that evening, as we were eating, Todd's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his demeanor shifted, a sly smirk appearing on his lips. Curiosity piqued, I watched as he typed something back, quickly and secretively. "You seem happy," I noted, unable to mask the bitterness in my voice. "I just got some good news from work," he replied nonchalantly, not looking up. After dinner, I cleaned up, my mind whirling with suspicions. Todd's secretive behavior had been growing, and my gut told me there was more to it than just work. As I lay in bed that night, Nana's words reverberated in my mind, offering a small but significant comfort. The path was undeniably hard, but I had to believe that happiness waited for me somewhere beyond the turmoil. The next day, while Todd was at work, I decided to take a small step towards reclaiming my freedom. I visited a nearby real estate office, inquiring about small, affordable apartments. I didn't make any commitments, but gathering information was the first step towards my eventual escape. Returning home later that day, I felt a mixture of fear and empowerment. Todd was already back and met me with his usual chilly disposition. "Where have you been?" he snapped, his tone accusatory. "Just running errands," I replied casually, refusing to meet his gaze. His eyes scanned my face, searching for any hint of defiance. Finding none, he retreated to his usual spot on the couch. I busied myself with mundane tasks, my mind buzzing with the possibilities that stretched ahead. Nana's words continued to echo in my mind, a beacon guiding me through the darkness. I wasn't sure how or when, but I knew that one day I would break free. And Todd would see just how strong I could be. The day started out normal. I was grocery shopping, crossing items off the list, trying to keep my mind focused. But a strange weariness had settled over me. I ignored it, convincing myself it was just the stress of everything weighing me down. As I reached for a box of cereal, a dizzy spell hit me hard. My vision blurred, the sounds around me became distant. Before I could react, everything went dark. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed. The sterile smell filled my nostrils. A nurse noticed I was awake and rushed to my side. "You're at St. Mary's Hospital," she explained softly. "You fainted in the grocery store. We ran some tests." Confusion and fear churned within me. What tests? What did they find? The doctor walked in, carrying a clipboard. His expression was serious. "Mrs. Smith, I'm Dr. Martin. We need to discuss your results." My heart pounded. "What's wrong with me?" Dr. Martin took a deep breath. "Your blood work revealed an infection. It's an STD, Mrs. Smith, chlamydia." I stared at him, my world collapsing. "That's impossible. I've only been with my husband." Dr. Martin looked at me with a mix of pity and concern. "This type of infection typically spreads through sexual contact. It's important you inform your partner and seek treatment." Numbness washed over me as Dr. Martin continued talking, but his words became a distant echo. Todd. He had to be the source. I couldn't believe he betrayed me like this. Back at the apartment, Todd was sitting on the couch, half watching TV. I stormed in, my anger boiling over. "Todd, we need to talk," I said, my voice shaking. He barely glanced at me. "What now, Kayla?" I took a deep breath, my hands trembling. "I've never been with anyone else, Todd. Who did you give this to me from?" Todd's head snapped up, his face turning pale. "What are you talking about?" "The doctor found an STD, Todd," I said, my voice cracking. "Chlamydia. Who else have you been sleeping with?" He stood up, his eyes blazing. "Are you accusing me of something?" "Who else would it be?" I shouted back. "I've only ever been with you. You did this to me." For a moment, Todd looked like he was going to deny it, but then his expression shifted to something colder. "You know what, Kayla? Maybe if you weren't so useless at home, I wouldn't have needed someone else." The room spun around me. His words cut deeper than any knife. My legs gave out, and I sank to the floor, tears streaming down my face. You betrayed me," I whispered. Todd scoffed. "Get over it. It's not the end of the world." But to me it felt like it was. Any hope I had clung to was shattered. The dream of a family, children, and a life full of love was obliterated in an instant. "Get out of my sight," he spat, storming out of the room. I was left alone in the cold, empty apartment, my body racked with sobs. Nana's voice echoed softly in my mind, offering a small, fragile comfort amidst the tumult. "Stay strong, Kayla. Better days are coming." As broken as I felt, a new resolve settled in my heart. Todd had taken much from me, but he wouldn't take my hope. One way or another I would break free from his grasp, and he would pay for every tear he forced me to shed. "I'll obey you, Todd, but remember, you asked for this," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the kettle whistling on the stove. Todd paid no attention to my words, lost in his phone, his face illuminated by the screen's blue light. He smirked and shrugged, barely looking up. "Good girl." Inside, I seethed with a mixture of rage and determination. His casual dismissal only fueled my drive. That night, as he slept peacefully, I quietly slipped out of bed and headed to the closet. I pulled down an old suitcase and began packing the essentials. I made sure to be quiet, each rustle of fabric sounding deafening in the silence of the night. The next few days, I tread carefully, making sure not to alert Todd to my plans. I stashed money away, small amounts here and there, enough to get me started once I left. I contacted a few friends I could trust, securing a place to crash temporarily. Every interaction with Todd became an act. My compliance was strategic. My silence was a weapon. It was all part of a plan he never saw coming. "Did you remember the groceries?" Todd asked one evening, not looking up from his dinner. "Yes, I picked everything up," I replied, handing him the receipt without a second thought. "Good," he muttered, his attention completely on the TV. His complacency disgusted me, but it also worked in my favor. That weekend, Todd had a work event he couldn't get out of. He left the apartment early, suited up and ready to impress. I watched from the window as his car pulled away. As soon as he was out of sight, I sprang into action. I pulled out the hidden suitcase from under the bed and added the final items. I grabbed the envelope of cash I had stashed behind a loose brick in the wall. Every move was made with precision, every step a part of my silent resolve. I had already secured a temporary place with my friend Jenny, who had been more than supportive when I confided in her. "You can stay as long as you need," she had assured me over the phone, her voice calm and steady. With everything packed, I took a final look around the apartment. This place had held so much promise once. Now it was just a cage, suffocating and cold. My eyes landed on a photo of Todd and me from happier times. I picked it up, feeling the weight of lost dreams in my hands. Then, with a deep breath, I set it down gently on the coffee table and walked out the door. As I locked the door behind me, I felt a strange mixture of fear and relief. Fear of the unknown and relief from the oppressive life I was leaving behind. I hurried to meet the cab waiting for me at the entrance of our building. As we sped away, I couldn't help but glance back one last time. The building shrank from view, and with it, the remnants of my life with Todd. Arriving at Jenny's place, she greeted me with a warm hug. "You're safe here," she reassured me. For the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to believe her. As I settled into the guest room, Nana's words echoed in my mind. "Stay strong, Kayla. Better days are coming." As I lay down that night, I felt a spark of hope bloom amidst my exhaustion. Todd had underestimated me greatly. He might have broken my heart, but my spirit was far from defeated. The real journey was just beginning, and this time I would be the one in control. "Why didn't you tell me about the STD, Todd? Who else are you sleeping with?" My voice cut through the quiet room like a knife as Todd entered our old childhood home, now vacant, except for the memories that clung to the walls. Todd's face twisted in shocked anger. "How did you find out about this place? And what the hell are you talking about?" "I know everything," I replied, my tone steady, years of pent-up rage and betrayal boiling over. "I've been recording our conversations, Todd. Every demeaning comment, every time you raised your voice. I have it all." For a moment, Todd's confidence wavered, but his arrogance quickly returned. "You think anyone will believe you? You have no proof. You're just a desperate, scorned woman." I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone, calmly pressing play on the audio files I had saved. Todd's venomous words filled the space, each one a piece of the puzzle that painted an unmistakable picture of his true nature. "They'll believe me," I said, my voice stronger now. "I've kept everything documented, and it's not just me, Todd. Others know too." His eyes widened, and for the first time I saw genuine fear. "What do you want, Kayla? Money? Apologies? None of this will change anything." "I'm not doing this for money or apologies," I stated. "I want you to face the consequences of your actions. You've hurt me, deceived me, and now it's time for you to pay." Todd clenched his fist, stepping closer. You think you're tough now, Kayla? You think you can take me down? You're pathetic." Ignoring his attempt to intimidate me, I continued, "You're going to come clean. You're going to face everyone and tell them the truth about who you are." A cruel laugh escaped Todd's lips. "And if I don't, then I'll release these recordings. I've made sure they're in safe hands. You can't stop them from getting out," I replied, holding his gaze with unwavering determination. Todd's confidence shattered. He paced back and forth, running a hand through his hair. "You're bluffing." "Try me," I challenged. "We both know what's at stake." Todd's face contorted with rage, but he knew he was trapped. He couldn't risk losing everything he'd built on lies. "Fine," he spat out. "I'll meet with your people. But this isn't over, Kayla." I stepped closer, forcing him to meet my gaze. "Oh, it's just beginning, and remember, every step you take, I'll be there watching." He stormed out of the house, leaving me standing alone in the echo of his departure. My heart pounded, but I felt an overwhelming sense of justification. I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my life. As I walked out, the memories of our childhood home seemed to fade, replaced by the strength of my new resolve. Todd would soon learn that karma had a long reach, and his time of reckoning was at hand. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, the odds were in my favor. As I headed back to Jenny's, the words Nana used to say echoed in my mind. "You'll face struggles, but you'll find happiness beyond the darkness." I was ready to face whatever came next, knowing the power of my own resilience. Todd's control over me was at its end, and the real battle was about to begin. "Your lies are finally catching up to you, Todd." "They know everything," I said with cold satisfaction, watching him squirm in the center of his office meeting room. Todd's mask of confidence cracked entirely in that moment. His eyes darted around the room, filled with his colleagues and his boss, Mr. Jenkins. They all wore expressions of shock and disbelief as the recordings of his verbal abuse played from the speakers. "What is this?" Mr. Jenkins demanded, his face turning red with anger. "This is not the man we thought we knew." Todd stumbled over his words, attempting to regain control. "This is private. This doesn't concern my work. Kayla, you have no right." I cut him off sharply. "You acted one way at home, Todd, but you can't hide anymore. Everyone sees the real you now." Sarah, one of Todd's close colleagues, stood up, her voice trembling with anger. "How could you, Todd? We trusted you. We thought you were one of us, but you've been living a lie." Todd's eyes narrowed, his attempts to gather sympathy faltering. "Sarah, you don't understand. This is all her doing. She's trying to ruin me." Mr. Jenkins raised a hand to silence Todd. "I think we've heard enough from you, Todd. Your behavior is absolutely unacceptable." "Kayla, thank you for bringing this to our attention." I nodded, my eyes never leaving Todd. "I'm not doing this out of spite. This is for everyone Todd has hurt, who might hurt in the future. This is about the truth." Todd's bravado faltered entirely. He turned to Mr. Jenkins, desperation creeping into his voice. "Please, I can explain. This isn't what it looks like." Mr. Jenkins shook his head. "It looks exactly like what it is, Todd. You're suspended, effective immediately. We will review this thoroughly, but expect a termination, and legal charges might follow." The colleagues murmured in agreement, their trust in Todd completely shattered. Todd looked around the room, realizing that he had lost his allies, his grip on power slipping entirely. I took a step forward, my voice calm but firm. "It didn't have to come to this, Todd. But you chose to deceive and manipulate. Actions have consequences." His eyes met mine, filled with a mix of anger and desperation. "This isn't over, Kayla." A small, cold smile tugged at my lips. "Oh, it is, and it's only fitting." I walked out of the meeting room, feeling their eyes on me, but more importantly, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. Todd's reign of terror was crumbling, and justice was on the horizon. As I exited the building, the fresh air hit my face, and I took a deep, liberating breath. My phone buzzed, a message from Jenny. "How did it go?" I replied simply, "It's done." Nana's words came back to me once again, a comforting reminder of the path I had taken to get here. I knew there were still battles to fight, but the biggest one had just been won. Todd would face the fallout of his actions, and I would no longer be a victim. I walked away from that chapter of my life, feeling stronger and more resolved than ever. As I headed home, my new life, free from Todd's shadow, began to take shape. Better days were indeed coming, and I was ready to embrace every single one of them. I stood by the window, watching the snow gently blanket the streets outside. Christmas lights adorned the houses, casting a soft, inviting glow. The sounds of laughter and festive cheer floated through the air, filling me with warmth. Ethan stepped into the room, holding our daughter Emma in his arms. Her eyes sparkled with excitement as she pointed to the lights outside. "Look, Mommy, it's so pretty," I smiled, reaching out to stroke her hair. "Yes, Emma, it really is." Ethan placed Emma down, and she ran off to marvel at the Christmas tree. He came over and slipped an arm around my waist. "You okay?" he asked gently, his voice full of concern and love. "Better than okay," I replied, leaning into him. I never believed Nana when she said happiness would find me after the struggle, but here we are. Ethan kissed my forehead, a reassuring gesture that grounded me. "You've been through a lot, Kayla. I'm proud of you." The past year had been transformative. Todd's reputation had taken a massive hit, and he faced legal consequences for his actions. Meanwhile, I had built a new life with Ethan, whose kindness and love had healed so many of my wounds. Emma's laughter filled the room as she decorated the tree with sparkly ornaments. The sight of her pure joy brought a sense of completeness that I had longed for. I joined her, adding ornaments and tinsel, focusing on the present and the future filled with hope. Ethan picked up a small box from under the tree and handed it to me. "Open it," he urged, his eyes twinkling with anticipation. Curious, I unwrapped the box to find a delicate necklace with a locket. Inside was a picture of Emma and a tiny note in Ethan's handwriting, "Forever and always." Tears welled up in my eyes, but they were tears of happiness. "Thank you, Ethan. It's perfect." Emma ran over and gazed at the locket with wide eyes. "So pretty, Mommy," I smiled down at her. "Just like you, darling." Later that evening, as we sat down for dinner, the joy and love in the room were palpable. It was a striking contrast to the tense, suffocating atmosphere I had once known. Ethan held my hand under the table, a small but meaningful gesture that reminded me of how far I'd come. After dinner, we gathered around the fireplace. Ethan read Emma a Christmas story while I watched, feeling immense gratitude. The flames flickered, casting a warm glow, reminiscent of the light Nana always said would find me. Reflecting on the past, I realized that every struggle, every tear, and every moment of despair had led me to this. Nana's words had come to life in ways I couldn't have imagined back then. Happiness didn't just find me. I built it with the strength and resilience I never knew I had. As Ethan finished the story, Emma snuggled into my lap, her tiny hands gripping mine. "I love you, Mommy," she murmured sleepily. "I love you too, Emma. So much," I whispered back, my heart full. Ethan's eyes met mine over Emma's head, filled with love and pride. In his gaze, I saw the future, a future built on love, trust, and the promise of better days. Nana's prediction had come true. Beyond the darkness, I had found not just happiness, but a peace I had thought was lost forever. And with Ethan and Emma by my side, I knew we could overcome anything life threw our way. The new dawn was here, bringing with it all the joy, love, and laughter I had once feared impossible. The journey had been long and painful, but in the end, it was completely worth it. With Ethan and Emma, I was ready to embrace every beautiful moment life had to offer. "Mom, can we go to Aunt Rose's cabin this summer? I miss the animals and the open fields," Ellie said, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. I glanced at her from the kitchen sink, wiped my hands on a towel, and smiled. "Of course, sweetheart. We'll go as soon as school is out." Ellie beamed, her face lighting up the room. Derek, my husband, sat at the dining table, scrolling through his phone. He barely looked up. "Can't you two ever stay home? This cabin obsession is ridiculous." "Derek, it's just a few weeks. Ellie loves it there, and so do I said, my voice calm but firm. Ellie, undeterred by her father's lack of enthusiasm, joined in. "Yes, I can't wait to help Aunt Rose with the animals again." Derek sighed, tapping incessantly on his phone. "Well, don't expect me to join. I've got too much work. Projects don't manage themselves." "Fine," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "We'll manage without you." His eyes finally met mine, a flicker of frustration surfacing. "Just make sure you stay reachable. I don't want the same issue as last time." I nodded, turning back to Ellie. "Start packing your things, kiddo. We leave Saturday morning." Ellie dashed out of the room, her excitement palpable. Derek pushed his chair back noisily, the legs scraping against the floor. "Anyway, I'm heading out. Got a late meeting," he muttered, picking up his briefcase. Still clutching the towel, I watched him walk towards the door. "Don't wait up," he added before leaving without a second glance. The door clicked shut, leaving a silence that felt heavier than it should have. Saturday arrived swiftly. The drive to Rose's cabin was long but peaceful. Ellie sang along to her favorite songs as we navigated through winding roads and lush forests. When we finally pulled up to the cabin, Rose was already outside, waving enthusiastically. "Aunt Rose!" Ellie hollered, leaping out of the car and sprinting towards her. Rose caught her in a big hug, laughing heartily. "Look at you! You've grown since I last saw you," Rose exclaimed, ruffling Ellie's hair. I joined them, giving Rose a tight hug. "It's good to be here," I admitted, breathing in the crisp mountain air. "Come on in." "Maxwell's inside making lunch. Rose said, guiding us towards the door. Inside, the cabin smelled like home. Fresh bread, herbs, and a hint of something sweet. Maxwell, Rose's husband, greeted us with his apron on, brandishing a spatula like a knight with his sword. "Ladies, welcome back. Ready for some homemade lasagna?" he asked, grinning widely. As we settled in, I felt a sense of peace wash over me, the opposite of the tension back at home. Ellie quickly got busy helping Rose feed the animals while I unpacked. That evening, we all sat around the dinner table, the warm glow of the cabin's light casting cozy shadows. Ellie chatted with Rose and Maxwell about school, her friends, and excitement for summer. Rose glanced at me, her eyes silently asking how things were. I gave her a small nod, indicating we'd talk later. Later that night, while Ellie slept soundly in the loft, Rose and I sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets against the cool night air. "So, how's Derek?" Rose asked cautiously. "Working as usual," I replied, taking a sip from my mug. "Things aren't great, Rose. He's distant, always working or on his phone," Rose sighed. "I see. And you? How are you holding up?" "One day at a time," I said, forcing a smile. "But being here helps. It's like a breath of fresh air after years of suffocation." Rose reached over and squeezed my hand. "Remember, you always have us. This place is as much yours as it is ours." The weight of her words settled over me, filling me with a sense of hope and strength I hadn't felt in a while. Watching the stars twinkle above, I allowed myself to imagine a future, one where Ellie and I found true happiness, even if that meant breaking away from Derek's oppressive indifference. Sunday morning at the cabin started with the sounds of roosters crowing and cows mooing. Ellie was already up and about, helping Rose with the morning chores. I could hear her giggles drifting through the open window as I slowly woke up, appreciating the quiet bustle of the farm. I grabbed a cup of coffee and walked outside to join them. Ellie was brushing one of the horses, her face aglow with happiness. Rose gave me a knowing smile from the chicken coop. "Morning, sis. Ready to dive into farm life?" she teased, scattering feed for the clucking chickens. "I'm ready," I answered, taking a sip of my coffee and feeling more at peace than I had in months. Entering the barn, I noticed the walls covered with old family photos and memorabilia. One picture showed Rose and me as kids, sitting on the same horse Ellie was now brushing. This place was full of history and life, everything my suburban home wasn't. Suddenly, my phone buzzed with a message from Derek. "Where are the files I asked for? This is urgent," I replied quickly, hands trembling slightly. "I sent them last night. Did you check your email?" His reply came swiftly. "Check again. They're not there. Why can't you do anything, right?" Rose must have seen the tension on my face. She walked over, wiping her hands on her jeans. "Is it Derek?" "Yeah, he's on about work, as usual," I sighed, pocketing my phone. Rose raised an eyebrow. "He should know you're on break. Doesn't he try to grasp family time at all?" I shook my head, feeling a knot tighten in my chest. "Let's not talk about him right now. What's next on our farm to-do list?" By the afternoon, Maxwell and Ellie had convinced me to join them in the fields to check on the crops. I watched as Ellie ran happily between the rows, her hair catching the golden light. This was what freedom felt like. Maxwell handed me a basket. "Think you can handle picking tomatoes?" "I think I can manage," I replied with a smile, bending down to start picking the ripe, red fruits. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed again, but this time I ignored it, focusing instead on the weight of the tomatoes in my hand and the richness of the soil beneath my feet. Later that day, Derek called. His voice was sharp, cutting through the serenity of the farm like a knife. "Why didn't you respond to my texts? What's so important there that you can't manage a simple email?" "We're busy here, Derek. It's good for Ellie to be outside, you know?" I answered, trying to keep my tone even. "She needs stability, not to be dragged off to the middle of nowhere," he retorted. I turned away from the house, looking out at the rolling fields. "She's stable here, happier than she's been in a long time." A heavy silence hung on the line before Derek spoke again, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Well, enjoy playing farmer. Don't count on me rescuing you when this little fantasy falls apart." As the call ended, I felt a wave of emotion swell inside me. Anger, frustration, and a fierce protectiveness towards Ellie and our time at the cabin. Rose came up behind me, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Hey, everything okay?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, just Derek being Derek." Rose nodded knowingly. He'll never understand this life, but that's his loss, not ours. Looking around at the calm and beauty surrounding us, I realized Rose was right. Derek might never get it, but that wasn't my problem anymore. Here in the mountains, I felt a sense of clarity and strength. A place where our lives could be rebuilt, one simple, fulfilling day at a time. We had been at Rose's cabin for a little over a week when Ellie came rushing in with wide eyes. "Mom, I saw a fox near the chicken coop. He was trying to get in." Rose looked up from the kitchen table, concern etched on her face. "A fox? That's not good. We need to secure the coop better." Ellie nodded earnestly. "Can we build something to protect the chickens?" Rose smiled. "Sure thing. We can make a stronger fence and set up some lights to scare it away." I was getting coffee when an idea hit me. Actually, I read about a new eco-friendly project at work. It uses renewable energy to create deterrents for predators. Maybe we could apply that to the farm. "Really, Mom? That sounds cool." Ellie's eyes sparkled with renewed excitement. Rose got up, intrigued. "Tell me more about it." I explained the concept, feeling a surge of enthusiasm. It's an ecotech project. It's solar-powered lights and sounds to keep predators away without harming them. I could talk to my boss and see if we could test it out here. Maxwell chimed in from the doorway. "Sounds like a great idea. Anything to keep the chickens safe and maybe even make things more sustainable around here." A few days later, I broached the project idea with my boss during a video call. I was thinking maybe we could pilot our ecotech project at my sister's farm. It's perfect for testing renewable energy solutions. My boss, a middle-aged man with a kind face, nodded thoughtfully. "That's an interesting proposal, Hannah. If it works, it could be a great case study. Go ahead and draft a plan, and we'll review it." I felt a jolt of excitement as I hung up the call. Ellie had overheard the conversation and came running. "Mom, are we really going to help Aunt Rose with your project?" "Yes, Ellie. If it gets approved, it'll be a great help to the farm." That night, I couldn't help but share the news with Derek, hoping for a small sign of encouragement. I talked to my boss about the eco project. He's interested. We might get to pilot it here. Derek snorted. "You're really planning to dig in the dirt now? How ambitious." I clenched my teeth, trying to keep calm. "It's not about dirt. It's about making a difference, using what I know to help my family." He scoffed, his voice dripping with disdain. "Just make sure you don't mess it up. I can't have you falling behind at work because of this ridiculous farm fantasy." I hung up, feeling a mix of anger and determination. Derek's words stung, but they also fueled my resolve. This project wasn't just about the farm. It was a chance to show him and myself what I was capable of. After that call, Rose found me sitting on the porch, looking out at the darkened fields. "Rough conversation?" I nodded. "Derek doesn't believe I can do it, but I need to prove him wrong for Ellie's sake and mine." Rose sat down beside me, her presence comforting. "You've got this, Hannah. Whatever you need, we're here to support you." Hearing those words gave me the strength to push forward. I went back inside, ready to start drafting a detailed plan for the ecotech project. As the days went by, I poured myself into the proposal, detailing every step and potential outcome. Each part of the plan felt like one more way to break free from Derek's toxic grip, to create a better future for Ellie and me. Finally, I submitted the plan to my boss. Now, all that was left was to wait for approval. But deep down, I knew I was already moving forward. Here at the cabin, we had started something real, something that could change everything. The sun was setting when Ellie wandered into the living room, her face thoughtful. "Mom, I saw Daddy with a lady today." I glanced up from my laptop, my heart skipping a beat. "What do you mean, sweetie?" "While we were driving back from town, he was at a cafe with a lady. They were holding hands." The room seemed to close in around me. Rose, sitting nearby, caught my eye. She looked as shocked as I felt. "Did you recognize her?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Ellie shook her head. "No, but they looked very friendly." I nodded slowly, masking my emotions. "Thanks for telling me, Ellie. Matt, why don't you go finish your homework?" Once Ellie had left the room, Rose leaned in, concerned. "What do you think is going on, Hannah?" I exhaled deeply. "I don't know, but it's time I found out for sure." The next day, I decided to call a private investigator. The idea of an affair had tormented me before, but Ellie's observation pushed me to act. I listed all the details I knew: feeling a mix of dread and determination. As days went by, I fell into a routine at the cabin, masking my anxiety with work on the eco project. Then the investigator called. "Hannah, I have some information. Derek's been meeting a woman regularly. I have photos and messages." My stomach churned, but I steadied myself. "Send me everything." The evidence came through email, a series of incriminating photos, clearly showing Derek and a woman at various places. My hands shook as I clicked on the messages, reading his flirtatious and deceitful words. With a deep breath, I called Derek. "We need to talk." He sighed loudly. "What now, Hannah?" "I know about her. I've seen the messages and the photos." There was a pause before he responded, aggravation dripping from his voice. "So what? Was it your little detective act that uncovered this? You were never here anyway, always off playing farmer." I clenched my fists, the anger building. "I was here for our daughter and our family. You're the one who shirked responsibility." His laugh was cold and unfeeling. "Responsibility, right? Look, don't pretend you're some saint. Enjoy your cabin life while it lasts." I could hear the contempt in his words, but it only steeled my resolve. "Derek, I'm done. I deserve better. Ellie deserves better. I'm starting divorce proceedings." Silence lingered before he spoke, voice rigid with controlled rage. "Fine, do whatever you think you have to, but don't expect this to be easy." Hanging up, I felt a strange relief wash over me. It was time to move forward, free from his deceit and toxic presence. I found Rose in the garden, her hands deep in the soil. "How did it go?" she asked, wiping dirt off her hands. "I told him it's over," I replied, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "I'm going to start the proceedings. It's time, for me and for Ellie." Rose stood and hugged me. "Good for you, Hannah. We'll do this together." As the days passed, I started gathering everything needed for the legal battle ahead. The cabin felt more like home with each passing day, a place where Ellie and I could build a new life, one honest step at a time. With support from Rose and Maxwell, I contacted a lawyer to begin the divorce process. The road ahead was daunting, but for the first time in a long time, I felt empowered. Our new beginning was within reach, firmly rooted in the love and strength of family. I stepped into the lawyer's office, my heart pounding. A young assistant guided me to a sleek conference room where a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a confident smile greeted me. "Ms. Anderson, I'm Karen Mitchell. Please, sit down," she said, extending her hand. Shaking her hand, I sat down. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice." Karen leaned forward, her demeanor professional yet warm. "Let's get straight to it. You've decided to file for divorce. Tell me everything." I recounted the recent events, culminating with Derek's blatant admission of infidelity. Karen took notes, nodding occasionally. "We need to gather all possible evidence of his misconduct. This will strengthen your case, especially concerning alimony and child support." A sudden thought struck me. Derek's former colleague, Karen, might help. She's openly despised him since he mishandled a project that cost her a promotion. Karen arched an eyebrow. "Do you think she'd testify against him?" "I believe she would. She's got no love lost for Derek." Karen smiled. "Good. I'll contact her." Leaving the office, I felt the first flickers of hope. I was taking steps, concrete steps, towards a better future for Ellie and me. The sense of forward movement was empowering. Back at the cabin, Ellie met me at the door. "Mom, how did it go?" I knelt down, hugging her tightly. "We're making progress, Ellie. We're going to be okay." A few days later, Karen, Derek's former colleague, agreed to meet us at a local cafe. She was a tall woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, her eyes sharp and assessing. "So, Derek finally screwed up enough for you to leave him, huh?" Karen said, sipping her coffee. I nodded, feeling a pang of hurt at the bluntness. "He's been having an affair. I need to prove his irresponsibility, especially financially." Karen leaned in slightly. "Believe me, I've got dirt on Derek. He's been fudging accounts and embezzling funds." My stomach turned. "Can you prove this?" Karen gave a wicked smile. "I've got emails, transaction records, the works. I've been saving them for an occasion exactly like this." Later, I shared the news with Rose and Maxwell at the dinner table. Ellie was at her friend's house, so it was just the three of us. "Karen's going to help. She has proof Derek's been embezzling," I said. Rose's fork froze halfway to her mouth. "Embezzling? That changes everything." Maxwell nodded. "If he's guilty of fraud, we've got leverage. He can't brush this off or bully you into submission." Armed with Karen's evidence, I felt more prepared than ever. The next week dragged by in a blur of legal preparations and emotional turmoil. Finally, the day of confrontation arrived. Derek showed up at the lawyer's office, his expression a mix of anger and defiance. "What's this about, Hannah? More baseless accusations?" I stood tall, Karen by my side. "No, Derek, this is about your fraudulent activities and how you've wronged our family." The color drained from his face, disbelief and rage battling for dominance. "You're bluffing," he spat. Karen laid out the evidence calmly, piece by piece. Derek's facade crumbled as he realized the gravity of his situation. "This is insane. You can't trust her. She's lying." Karen looked unperturbed. "The court will decide that, Mr. Anderson." I watched Derek, his composure shattering, revealing the scared, selfish man beneath. "What do you want?" he finally muttered, beaten. "I want a fair divorce settlement, full custody of Ellie, and alimony," I stated firmly. Derek's eyes were cold, but he knew there was no escape. "Fine, take what you want, just get out of my life." As I walked out of the office, a mixture of relief and resolve flooded me. Rose and Maxwell were waiting outside, their faces alight with anticipation. "It's over?" I told them, my voice steady. "We've won the first battle." Rose hugged me tightly. "You did it, Hannah. Now it's time for the next chapter." Maxwell clapped me on the back. "Onwards and upwards, sister." With their support and the evidence in our favor, the future began to glow with promise. It was time to build a new life, one where Ellie and I could truly thrive. The courtroom buzzed with hushed whispers as I took my seat next to Karen. Derek's attorney, a grizzled man with a stern face, shuffled papers at the opposite table. Derek sat beside him, glaring at me with a mixture of anger and desperation. Karen leaned over, her voice low but reassuring. "Stick to the facts. We have all the evidence we need." The judge, a stern-looking man with glasses perched on the tip of his nose, banged his gavel. "Court is now in session for the case of Anderson versus Anderson." Derek's lawyer stood up first, his voice smooth and rehearsed. "Your Honor, we contend that Mrs. Anderson is exaggerating claims of misconduct to gain an unfair advantage in the divorce settlement." I felt a surge of anger, but Karen squeezed my arm subtly, grounding me. When it was our turn, Karen presented the evidence methodically, starting with Derek's infidelity. "Your Honor, here are messages proving Mr. Anderson's affair," she said, handing the judge a folder. The judge glanced over the papers, then looked at Derek. "Mr. Anderson, do you deny the validity of these messages?" Derek remained silent, his face a mix of defiance and fear. Next, Karen presented the evidence of embezzlement. She displayed emails, bank statements, and transaction records, each a nail in Derek's coffin. This evidence clearly highlights Mr. Anderson's fraudulent activities, which have compromised not only his marriage, but also his professional integrity, Karen stated firmly. Derek's lawyer attempted to object, but the judge silenced him with a wave of his hand. "Mr. Anderson, do you have any defense for these claims?" Derek stood up, his facade crumbling. "These are lies, fabrications to ruin me." The judge's gaze was cold. "The evidence speaks loud and clear, Mr. Anderson." Karen shot me a supportive glance. It was time for the final blow. Karen stood up. "Your Honor, we ask for full custody of Ellie Anderson, alimony, and that Mr. Anderson be held accountable for his fraudulent actions." Derek exploded. "This is a setup. She's turning my daughter against me." The judge banged his gavel again, bringing order to the chaos. "Mr. Anderson, enough. I will review the evidence and issue a ruling shortly." We left the courtroom to wait for the judge's decision, my nerves stretched thin. Rose and Maxwell arrived, bringing comfort and moral support. Finally, the judge called us back in. As everyone settled, he looked straight at Derek, his voice firm. "Based on the overwhelming evidence of infidelity and financial misconduct, this court grants Mrs. Anderson full custody of Ellie Anderson, as well as alimony and child support. Furthermore, I am referring Mr. Anderson's fraudulent activities to the appropriate authorities." Derek's face turned white, then red with fury. "This is a witch hunt," he screamed. "You can't do this to me." Karen stood up, unflappable. "Justice has been served, Mr. Anderson." The judge banged his gavel one last time. "Court is adjourned." As we filed out, a weight lifted off my shoulders. Rose hugged me tightly, her eyes filled with tears of relief. "It's finally over, Hannah. You did it." Ellie, who had been waiting with Maxwell in the hallway, ran up to me. "Mom, are we really away from Dad now?" I picked her up, holding her close. Yes, sweetheart, we're free. Maxwell clapped me on the back. Time to start that new chapter, huh? I nodded, my heart swelling with hope. With Derek facing legal consequences and having lost the fight, the path was clear. Karen shook my hand warmly. You were strong through this, Hannah. Now, go make that new life you deserve. As we left the courthouse, I felt a sense of renewal. The battle had been fierce, but we had emerged victorious. The road ahead was bright and open, ready for us to walk it together as a family. Weeks after the court's ruling, the news about Derek's financial misconduct spread like wildfire. His once commanding presence at work was reduced to whispers and suspicious glances. One afternoon, Karen called me. Hannah, have you seen the news? No, why? I asked, sensing something significant. Derek's been fired. The board found out about his embezzlement. They've terminated his contract. I felt a rush of satisfaction. He's really facing the consequences now, Karen chuckled. It's far from over. He's being investigated by the authorities for fraud. He won't be getting away with anything. At home, Rose and I couldn't help but feel a sense of justice. Later that evening, Ellie and I sat on the porch, the sky painted with the hues of sunset. Mom, will Daddy be okay? She asked softly. I looked at her, choosing my words carefully. He made bad choices, sweetie. Now he has to face the music. But you and I, we're safe, and that's what matters. News outlets soon picked up Derek's story, his name plastered with accusations and scandal. One day Karen called again, sounding triumphant. Hannah, the judge ruled that Derek must pay full child support and alimony. They've frozen his assets to cover it. I felt a mix of relief and triumph. Thank you, Karen. You've been incredible through all this. My pleasure, Hannah. Now go enjoy your life. The following weeks brought more signs of Derek's downfall. He tried to contact me several times, but I ignored his calls. One evening, I finally picked up, anticipating his outrage. You've ruined my life, Hannah. Derek's voice was a blend of anger and desperation. You did this to yourself, Derek, I replied evenly. You made your choices. Now live with them. Do you think you're so perfect? You're just hiding on that stupid farm, pretending everything's okay, he sneered. I took a deep breath, holding back a retort. Ellie and I are happy, Derek. We're moving on, and you should do the same. Slamming the phone down, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Derek's words couldn't hurt us anymore. A few days later, Rose came rushing into the cabin with the newspaper. Hannah, look at this! The headline read, Former Executive Faces Jail Time for Fraud. The article detailed Derek's impending court dates and the serious charges against him. Maxwell clapped his hands, grinning. Looks like karma finally caught up with him. I nodded, feeling a deep sense of closure. It's over. Really over. Ellie joined us, her face curious. What's going on? I hugged her tightly. Nothing to worry about, sweetie. Just some old news. We're free now. Ellie's smile reaffirmed what I felt inside. The shadow Derek had cast over our lives was gone. We could now embrace the future without looking back. As Derek's life unraveled, ours blossomed. The ecotech project at the farm began to thrive, bringing new energy and purpose. Ellie adapted to her new school, making friends and finding joy in the simple pleasures of one evening. As we finished dinner, Ellie looked at me with excitement. Mom, can we invite my friends over to see the farm? They'd love it here. I smiled, my heart swelling with pride. Of course, Ellie, this is our home, and we should share it. Rose and Maxwell nodded in agreement, their faces reflecting the sentiment. With each passing day, the cabin felt more like home, a place of healing and growth. As the sun set on our past struggles, I knew we were ready to embrace whatever future awaited us, brimming with newfound strength and hope. The final court ruling had made it clear, Derek had lost everything. Seeing the news, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication, but my focus now was entirely on building a new life for Ellie and myself. We officially moved into Rose's cabin. The small space felt cozy and welcoming, filled with the smell of fresh bread and the sound of laughter, elements drastically missing from our old home. Ellie thrived, her once anxious demeanor replaced by a radiant smile. One crisp morning, as we sipped our coffee on the porch, Rose turned to me. Guess what? The ecotech project got mentioned in the local paper again. They're calling it a model for sustainable farming. That's fantastic news, Rose, I exclaimed, feeling immense pride and relief. That afternoon, Ellie had her friends over. They fed the chickens, ran through the fields, and took turns on the tire swing, Their laughter echoed, filling the space with youthful joy. "Mom, I love it here," Ellie said, throwing her arms around me. "I never want to leave." "I'm glad, Ellie. This is our home now," I replied, hugging her back tightly. Meanwhile, Derek took every opportunity to try disrupting our peace. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, my phone buzzed with a message. "Derek again?" Rose asked, seeing my face tense. "Let's see." I opened the message. Derek had somehow found out about our success with the Ecotech project. "Enjoy your little success while it lasts. You're nothing without me," his text read. I rolled my eyes, showing it to Rose and Maxwell. "He's desperate," Maxwell remarked. "Ignore him." "Agreed." Rose said, "He's just trying to rattle you." I nodded, blocking his number. "He can't touch us now. We're stronger than he thinks." Over the next months, Derek's situation worsened. He lost his house and friends, his reputation in tatters. Occasionally, I'd hear bits of news about his struggles, but I remained focused on our new life. His downfall was a testament to the karma that had finally caught up with him. One morning, we were interrupted by an unexpected knock at the door. Karen stood there, looking pleased. "Good news," she announced. "Derek's been sentenced to prison for fraud. The chapter is truly closed." A rush of relief swept over me. "Thank you, Karen, for everything." "You earned this, Hannah," she replied. "Now, live your best life." As Karen left, Rose clapped her hands, gathering everyone outside. "This calls for a celebration." We spent the day enjoying an impromptu barbecue, Ellie playing with her friends and Maxwell strumming his guitar. The air was filled with laughter and music, a sharp contrast to the struggle and pain we'd endured. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ellie snuggled up beside me, her eyes reflecting the twinkling stars. "Mom, I'm so glad we're here. I feel free," she said softly. I kissed her forehead. "Me too, Ellie. We're exactly where we belong." That night, as everyone settled into the cabin, I took a moment to step outside. The sky was clear and the stars shone brightly. I breathed in the fresh mountain air, feeling the weight of the past lift completely. Our new beginning wasn't without its challenges, but it was filled with hope and endless possibilities. Here, surrounded by family and nature, we had found our sanctuary. And as Derek faced the consequences of his actions, I felt a deep sense of justice. This life, this freedom, was the karma he could never touch. For Ellie and me, it was a testament to our resilience and a promise of a brighter future. "You're never going to be as perfect as my mother." Jasper's words cut through the air like a knife. I stand there stunned as my husband of 5 years glares at me with a mixture of anger and contempt. "I'm not your mother, and I never will be," I shoot back, my voice trembling with rage. "I'm done trying to live up to her impossible standards." Jasper scoffs, rolling his eyes. "You couldn't even if you tried. She's everything you're not, elegant, refined, and knows how to keep a home." I feel my blood boil. "Is that what you want? A housewife who caters to your every whim?" "Well, I've got news for you, Jasper. I'm my own person, with my own dreams and aspirations. I won't be your little puppet." He steps closer, his face inches from mine. "You knew what you were getting into when you married me. I thought you'd be different, but you're just like all the rest, selfish and ungrateful." Tears sting my eyes, but I refuse to let them fall. I won't give him the satisfaction of seeing me cry. If wanting to be treated with respect and equality makes me selfish, then so be it. I'm not going to apologize for standing up for myself. Jasper's jaw clenches, and for a moment I think he might hit me. But instead he turns on his heel and storms out of the room, slamming the door behind him. I sink to the floor, my legs no longer able to support me. How did we get here? When did the man I fell in love with turn into this cruel, controlling stranger? I think back to our early days when Jasper was charming and attentive. He swept me off my feet with grand gestures and promises of a beautiful future together. But as soon as we said "I do," everything changed. At first it was subtle. A snide comment here, a disapproving look there. But over time his behavior became more overt. He started dictating what I could wear, who I could see, and how I should spend my time. He even convinced me to quit my job, claiming that he wanted me to focus on being a homemaker. I thought I could handle it, that I could be the perfect wife he wanted. But no matter how hard I tried, it was never enough. And now as I sit here on the cold, hard floor, I realize that I've lost myself in the process. A sudden wave of determination washes over me. I won't let Jasper break me. I won't let him control my life any longer. I push myself up, wiping away the tears that have managed to escape. It's time to take back my power, to rediscover the strong, independent woman I once was. I don't know how I'll do it, but I know I can't continue living like this. As I stand there, staring at the closed door, I make a silent vow to myself. I will find a way out of this toxic marriage, no matter what it takes. I will rebuild my life on my own terms, and I will never again let anyone dim my light. With a deep breath, I take my first step towards freedom, towards the future I know I deserve. It won't be easy, but I'm ready to fight for it. For myself, and for the life I know I'm meant to live. As I sit in my car, parked outside Naomi's house, I can't help but reflect on the past 5 years of my marriage. How did I let things get so bad? I used to be a strong, independent woman, but somehow Jasper managed to chip away at my self-esteem, piece by piece. I think back to the early warning signs. The way he would criticize my cooking, my appearance, even the way I laughed. At first, I brushed it off as him being particular, but now I see it for what it was, a systematic attempt to control every aspect of my life. And then there were the lies. The late nights at the office, the mysterious phone calls, the sudden trips out of town. I always had a nagging suspicion that something wasn't right, but I never had the courage to confront him. Until now. I take a deep breath and exit the car, making my way up the path to Naomi's front door. She opens it before I even have a chance to knock, enveloping me in a tight hug. "I'm so glad you're here," she whispers, leading me inside. "I've been worried sick about you." We settle onto her couch, and I pour out my heart, telling her everything that's happened over the past few weeks. The arguments, the accusations, the growing distance between Jasper and me. "I think he's cheating on me," I confess, my voice barely above a whisper. "With his new secretary, Scarlett." Naomi's eyes widen. "That little tramp? I knew there was something off about her the moment I met her." I nod, feeling a mix of anger and despair wash over me. "I don't know what to do. Naomi, I feel like I'm losing my mind." She takes my hand, her expression fierce. "You need to find out the truth, Arya. You deserve to know what's really going on." I bite my lip, hesitating. "But how? Jasper's so secretive. He barely lets me near his phone or computer." Naomi leans in, a glint of determination in her eyes. "Leave that to me. I have a friend who's a private investigator. He owes me a favor." I feel a flicker of hope ignite in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, I can finally get the answers I need. Over the next few days, Naomi's friend tails Jasper, gathering evidence of his infidelity. When he presents me with the proof, photos of Jasper and Scarlett in compromising positions, recordings of their intimate conversations, I feel like I've been punched in the gut. But beneath the pain, there's a simmering rage. How dare he betray me like this? How dare he make a mockery of our marriage vows? I confront Jasper that night, throwing the evidence in his face. He has the audacity to deny it at first, but when he realizes he's been caught, his demeanor changes. "So what if I'm sleeping with her?" He sneers, his eyes cold. "It's not like you're fulfilling my needs. You're a pathetic excuse for a wife." I see red. Before I know what I'm doing, I'm screaming at him, hurling every insult I can think of. He matches me, word for word, his voice rising until we're both shouting at the top of our lungs. And then, suddenly, he's on me, his hands around my throat, squeezing the air from my lungs. I claw at his fingers, gasping for breath, but he's too strong. Black spots dance in my vision as I feel myself slipping away. The next thing I know, I'm waking up in a hospital bed, my head throbbing and my arm in a cast. The doctors tell me I'm lucky to be alive, that I suffered a concussion and a broken arm from falling down the stairs. But I know the truth. Jasper pushed me. And if it hadn't been for a neighbor hearing the commotion and calling the police, I might not have survived. As I lie there, bruised and broken, I make a decision. I won't let Jasper win. I won't let him destroy me. I'll do whatever it takes to bring him to justice and rebuild my life, even if it means facing my darkest fears and confronting the ugliest parts of myself. The hospital room is cold and sterile, the beeping of machines my only company. I stare at the stark white ceiling, trying to process the events of the past few hours. How could Jasper do this to me? How could he hurt me like this? As if on cue, the door opens and my father Henry walks in. His face is etched with worry, his eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. "Arya," My baby girl, he whispers, rushing to my bedside. I came as soon as I heard. Are you okay? I try to smile, but it comes out as more of a grimace. I've been better, Dad, but I'll survive. He takes my hand, his grip firm and reassuring. I know you will, sweetheart. You're the strongest person I know. Tears prick at the corners of my eyes. I don't feel very strong right now. I feel like a fool for not seeing Jasper for who he really is. My father's expression hardens. That man is a monster. I always had a bad feeling about him, but I never imagined he'd go this far. I nod, swallowing the lump in my throat. There's more, Dad. I found out he's been embezzling money from his father's company, and he's been using it to fund his affair with his secretary. Henry's eyes widen. Embezzlement? Affair? Jesus, Arya, you need to get away from him. Press charges. Make him pay for what he's done. I hesitate, fear gripping my heart. But what if he comes after me? What if he tries to hurt me again? My father's jaw clenches. He won't get the chance. I'll make sure of it. I may be retired, but I still have connections on the force. We'll get a restraining order, and I'll personally see to it that he's arrested for assault. Relief washes over me, followed by a sudden wave of nausea. I lurch forward, my hand flying to my mouth. Arya, what's wrong? My father asks, alarmed. I shake my head, trying to steady my breathing. I don't know. I just feel sick all of a sudden. A nurse enters the room, a clipboard in hand. Miss Hawthorne, I have your test results back. I look up, my heart pounding. Test results? What test results? The nurse gives me a sympathetic smile. The pregnancy test, dear. Congratulations. You're going to be a mother. The room spins, and I feel like I might pass out. Pregnant? How can this be happening? I can't bring a child into this mess. I can't let Jasper have any more power over me. My father squeezes my hand, his voice gentle. Arya, listen to me. This baby is a blessing, a chance for a fresh start. You can do this. You can be an amazing mother. I close my eyes, trying to imagine a future where I'm not constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for Jasper to strike. A future where my child is safe and loved and protected. You're right, Dad, I say, my voice barely above a whisper. I can do this. I have to do this. For my baby and for myself. I open my eyes, a newfound determination coursing through my veins. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm going to make sure Jasper pays for everything he's done, to me and to his family's company. My father nods, a proud smile on his face. That's my girl. I'll be with you every step of the way. We'll get through this together. As I lie there, my hand resting on my still flat stomach, I feel a flicker of hope. Maybe this baby is a sign. A reminder that even in the darkest of times there's still a chance for light, for love, for a future worth fighting for. And fight I will. With every ounce of strength I have left in me, for my child, and for the woman I know I can become. Jasper may have broken my bones, but he'll never break my spirit. Not now, not ever. The divorce papers feel heavy in my hands as I sit across from Jasper and his mother, Evelyn. Her eyes are cold, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. Arya, dear, she says, her voice dripping with false concern. Are you sure this is what you want? A divorce is so final. Think of the family name. Think of Jasper's reputation. I feel a surge of anger. Jasper's reputation? What about my well-being? What about the fact that he pushed me down the stairs and nearly killed me and our unborn child? Evelyn waves a dismissive hand. Oh, don't be so dramatic. It was an accident. Jasper would never intentionally hurt you. I laugh, the sound bitter and hollow. An accident? Is that what he told you? Well, let me tell you the truth, Evelyn. Your son is a monster. He's been cheating on me, embezzling money, and abusing me for years. And I'm done. I'm done being his punching bag and his doormat. Jasper leans forward, his eyes narrowed. You're making a mistake, Arya. You'll never survive without me. You're nothing without me. I meet his gaze, unflinching. That's where you're wrong, Jasper. I'm everything without you, and I'm going to make sure you pay for what you've done, to me and to your father's company. Evelyn gasps, her hand flying to her chest. What are you talking about? Jasper would never steal from his own father. I slide a folder across the table. I have proof. Bank statements, emails, recordings. He's been embezzling for years, using the money to fund his lavish lifestyle and his affair with his secretary. Jasper's face pales, and for a moment I see a flicker of fear in his eyes. But then it's gone, replaced by cold, hard rage. You bitch! He snarls, lunging across the table. I'll kill you for this. But before he can reach me, my father steps forward, placing himself between us. Touch her again, and I'll make sure you rot in prison for the rest of your miserable life. Evelyn is sobbing now, her carefully crafted facade crumbling. Jasper, tell me it's not true. Tell me this is all a misunderstanding. But Jasper says nothing, his jaw clenched tight. I can see the wheels turning in his head, trying to find a way out of this mess. I stand up, my head held high. It's over, Jasper. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm taking full custody of our child. You'll pay child support, and you'll stay away from us. Forever. I turn to Evelyn, my voice softening. I know you love your son, Evelyn, but he needs help. He needs to face the consequences of his actions, and if you truly care about him, you'll let him do that. With that, I walk out of the room, my father by my side. I feel a weight lift off my shoulders, a sense of freedom I haven't felt in years. But I know this is just the beginning. Jasper won't go down without a fight. He'll try to weasel his way out of this, to manipulate the system in his favor. But I'm ready. I have the truth on my side, and I have the support of the people who love me. My father, Naomi, now my unborn child. As I step out into the sunlight, I take a deep breath, feeling the warmth on my face. For the first time in a long time, I feel hope. Hope for a better future, a future free from fear and pain. I place a hand on my stomach, a small smile playing at the corners of my lips. It's just you and me now, little one, but we're going to be okay. We're going to make it through this, and we're going to come out stronger on the other side. And with that, I take my first steps towards my new life, my head held high and my heart full of determination. Jasper may have broken my bones, but he'll never break my spirit. Not now, not ever. The weeks following my confrontation with Jasper and Evelyn are a blur of legal meetings and doctor's appointments. My father, true to his word, has been by my side every step of the way, helping me navigate the complex world of divorce proceedings and criminal investigations. Today we sit in his study, poring over the evidence he's managed to gather on Jasper's shady dealings. Bank statements, phone records, surveillance photos, it's all there, painting a damning picture of a man consumed by greed and power. I've seen a lot of scumbags in my time on the force, my father says, shaking his head. But Jasper takes the cake. The things he's done, the people he's hurt, it's unforgivable. I nod, my eyes fixed on a particularly incriminating email exchange between Jasper and a known associate of the mob. I just don't understand how he could do this, how he could betray his own family, his own wife, for money and power. My father sighs, leaning back in his chair. Some people are just wired differently, Arya. They don't have a conscience or a sense of right and wrong. They'll do whatever it takes to get what they want, no matter who gets hurt in the process. I feel a chill run down my spine, remembering the cold, calculating look in Jasper's eyes as he lunged at me across the table. Do you think he'll go to prison? For the embezzlement and for what he did to me? My father nods, his jaw set in determination. I'll make damn sure of it. I've already turned over all the evidence to the authorities. They're building a case against him as we speak. Relief washes over me, followed by a sudden wave of fear. But what if he tries to come after me? What if he tries to take our child away? My father leans forward, taking my hand in his. Arya, listen to me. I won't let that happen. I'll do whatever it takes to keep you and my grandchild safe. Even if it means putting myself between you and Jasper. Tears prick at the corners of my eyes, and I squeeze my father's hand. I don't know what I'd do without you, Dad. You've been my rock through all of this. He smiles, his eyes soft with love. That's what fathers are for, sweetheart, to protect their children, no matter what. We sit in silence for a moment, the weight of the past few months hanging heavy in the air. Finally, my father clears his throat, his expression turning serious. There's something else you should know, Arya. Something about Jasper's past. I feel a knot form in the pit of my stomach. What is it? My father takes a deep breath, as if steeling himself for what he's about to say. I did some digging, and it turns out this isn't the first time Jasper's been accused of domestic violence. His ex-girlfriend, a woman named Tara, filed a restraining order against him years ago. She claimed he beat her, threatened to kill her if she ever left him. I feel like I might be sick. Oh my God, why didn't I know about this? Why didn't anyone warn me? My father shakes his head, his expression grim. He had it sealed, buried deep, Probably paid off a judge or two to make it go away. But it's all coming out now. The truth always has a way of coming to light. I close my eyes, trying to process this new information. How could I have been so blind? How could I have missed the signs? But even as I berate myself, I feel a new sense of determination taking hold. I won't let Jasper get away with this. I won't let him hurt anyone else the way he hurt me. I open my eyes, meeting my father's gaze with a steely resolve. We have to stop him, Dad. We have to make sure he never lays a hand on another woman again. My father nods, a proud smile playing at the corners of his lips. That's my girl. We'll take him down, Arya, together, and we'll make sure he pays for every last one of his sins. The sound of shattering glass jolts me awake, my heart pounding in my chest. For a moment, I'm disoriented, my mind still foggy with sleep. But then I hear it again, the unmistakable sound of footsteps creeping through my apartment. Fear grips me, cold and paralyzing. I know it's Jasper. I can feel it in my bones. He's come for me, just like I always feared he would. I reach for my phone with shaking hands, dialing 911. But before I can even get a word out, my bedroom door bursts open and there he is. His eyes wild, his face contorted with rage. You stupid bitch, he snarls, stalking towards me. You thought you could ruin me? You thought you could take everything away from me? I scramble out of bed, my legs tangling in the sheets. Jasper, please, don't do this. Think about our child. He laughs, the sound harsh and mocking. Our child? You mean the bastard you're carrying? That thing is no child of mine. Tears stream down my face as I back away from him, my eyes darting around the room for an escape. But he's blocking the only exit, his body coiled with menace. I'm going to make you pay, Arya. I'm going to make you suffer for what you've done to me. He lunges at me, his hands outstretched. I dodge to the side, my instincts taking over. I've spent years being his victim, but not anymore. Not tonight. I grab the lamp from my bedside table, swinging it with all my might. It connects with Jasper's head with a sickening crack, sending him stumbling backwards. I don't waste a second. I run, my bare feet pounding against the hardwood floors. I can hear Jasper behind me, his footsteps heavy and unsteady. I make it to the front door, my fingers fumbling with the lock. But before I can wrench it open, Jasper is on me, his hands wrapping around my throat. You're not going anywhere, he growls, his breath hot against my face. You're mine, Arya. You'll always be mine. Black spots dance in my vision as he squeezes tighter, cutting off my air supply. I claw at his hands, desperate for release, but he's too strong, too fueled by rage and hatred. Just as I feel myself slipping away, the sound of sirens pierces the air. Jasper's grip loosens, his head whipping towards the window. Police! Open up! He curses under his breath, releasing me. I collapse to the floor, gasping for air. The next few moments are a blur of shouts and splintering wood as the police break down the door. They swarm into the apartment, their guns drawn. Jasper Hawthorne, you're under arrest for attempted murder and breaking and entering. I watch as they handcuff him, his eyes still blazing with fury. But as they lead him away, I feel a sense of relief wash over me. It's over. He can't hurt me anymore. My father is there, his arms wrapping around me in a tight embrace. It's okay, Arya. You're safe now. He's never going to touch you again. I nod, my body shaking with sobs. I thought he was going to kill me, Dad. I thought I was going to die. He strokes my hair, his voice soft and soothing. But you didn't. You fought back. You survived. And now he's going to pay for everything he's done. As the adrenaline fades, I feel a new emotion taking hold, a fierce, burning anger. Jasper may be in custody, but this isn't over, not by a long shot. I'll see him brought to justice. I'll make sure he spends the rest of his miserable life behind bars, and I'll do it all for our child, the innocent life he so callously dismissed. I may be battered and bruised, but I'm not broken. I'm a survivor, and I'll never let anyone make me feel powerless again. The courtroom is packed, the air thick with tension. I sit at the prosecutor's table, my father and Naomi by my side. Jasper is across the aisle, his face a mask of cold indifference. The trial has been a grueling ordeal, each day bringing new revelations of Jasper's cruelty and deceit. But today, as the final witness takes the stand, I feel a sense of anticipation building in my chest. Scarlett, Jasper's former mistress, looks nervous as she's sworn in. Her eyes dart around the room, avoiding Jasper's icy stare. Miss Johnson, The prosecutor begins. Can you please tell the court about your relationship with the defendant? Scarlett takes a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. We were lovers. He told me he was going to leave his wife for me, that we were going to start a new life together. Jasper's lawyer jumps to his feet. Objection. Relevance? The judge waves him off. Overruled. Continue, Miss Johnson. Scarlett nods, her voice growing stronger. He promised me the world, but it was all a lie. He never had any intention of leaving Aria. He was just using me, like he used everyone else in his life. I feel a pang of sympathy for Scarlett despite everything. She was just another pawn in Jasper's twisted game. The prosecutor presses on, his voice firm. And what happened when you confronted him about his lies? Scarlett's eyes fill with tears. He hit me. He told me I was nothing, that I meant nothing to him. He said if I ever told anyone about us, he'd kill me. The courtroom erupts in gasps and murmurs. I glance at Jasper, expecting to see anger or defiance, but instead I see something else. Fear. As Scarlett steps down from the stand, the prosecutor calls his final witness. The state calls Evelyn Hawthorne to the stand. I watch in disbelief as Jasper's mother takes the oath, her face a mask of sorrow and regret. Mrs. Hawthorne, the prosecutor says gently, I know this must be difficult for you, but can you please tell the court about your son's behavior towards his wife? Evelyn takes a shuddering breath, her eyes fixed on her hands. I knew he was hurting her. I saw the bruises, heard the fights, but I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe my son could be capable of such things. She looks up, her gaze locking with mine. But I was wrong. I was so wrong. And I'm so sorry, Aria. I should have protected you. I should have stopped him. Tears stream down my face as Evelyn's words wash over me. For so long I thought I was alone in this fight. But now I see that I have allies in the most unexpected places. The prosecutor turns to the jury, his voice ringing with conviction. Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard the evidence. You have heard the testimony of the brave women who survived Jasper Hawthorne's abuse. And now it's time for justice to be served. The jury deliberates for less than an hour before returning with their verdict, guilty on all counts. I feel a rush of emotion as the judge reads out the sentence, 25 years to life, with no chance of parole. It's over. It's finally over. As the bailiffs lead Jasper away, he turns to me, his eyes burning with hatred. This isn't over, Aria. I'll find a way to make you pay for this. But I just smile, my head held high. No, Jasper, you're the one who's going to pay for the rest of your miserable life. I walk out of the courtroom, my father and Naomi by my side. The sun is shining, the air crisp and clean. For the first time in years, I feel truly free. I know the road ahead won't be easy. I have a child to raise, a life to rebuild. But I also know that I'm not alone. I have the love and support of my family, my friends, and my own unbreakable spirit. And that's enough. That's more than enough. 5 years. That's how long it's been since I walked out of that courtroom, my head held high and my heart finally free. 5 years of raising my daughter, of building a life on my own terms, 5 years of healing, of learning to trust again, of rediscovering the strength that Jasper tried so hard to steal from me. But now, as I watch Lily play in the park, her laughter ringing out like a bell, I feel a familiar sense of unease creeping up my spine. Because today is the day that Jasper is being released from prison, his sentence cut short by some bureaucratic loophole that I still don't fully understand. I've been dreading this moment for months, ever since I got the call from the prison warden. I knew it was coming, but somehow I still feel unprepared. How do you face the man who nearly destroyed you, who left scars on your body and your soul that will never fully heal? I'm jolted out of my thoughts by a voice calling my name. I turn, my heart dropping into my stomach. It's Jasper. His face leaner and harder than I remember, his eyes still filled with that same cold hatred. Aria, he says, his voice dripping with false charm. It's been a long time. I stand up, my body tense and ready for a fight. What do you want, Jasper? He smiles, the expression not quite reaching his eyes. I want to see my daughter, of course. I have rights, you know. I shake my head, my voice trembling with barely suppressed rage. You lost those rights the moment you laid a hand on me, the moment you tried to kill me and our unborn child. Jasper takes a step forward, his fists clenched at his sides. Don't test me, Aria. I've spent the last 5 years dreaming of this moment, dreaming of the day I'd finally get to see you and Lily again. I stand my ground, my chin lifted in defiance. You'll never see her, Jasper, not as long as I'm alive. He laughs, the sound harsh and grating. You think you can stop me? You think you have any power here? I feel a sudden surge of strength, the same strength that carried me through the darkest days of my marriage, through the long and painful journey of rebuilding my life. I have all the power, Jasper, because I'm not afraid of you anymore. I'm not the same woman you married, the same woman you tried to break. I'm stronger now, stronger than you'll ever be. Jasper's face twists with rage, his hands balling into fists. But before he can take a step, I hear a voice calling out from behind me. Mommy! I turn, my heart swelling with love and pride, as I see Lily running towards me, her face flushed with joy. I scoop her up into my arms, holding her close. Hey, baby girl, I murmur, pressing a kiss to her forehead. I love you so much. I turn back to Jasper, my voice steady and calm. This is my life now, Jasper. This is my family, and you have no place in it. Not now, not ever. For a moment, I see a flicker of something in his eyes. Regret, perhaps, or even a hint of shame. But it's gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by that same cold, hard anger. This isn't over, Arya, he says, his voice low and menacing. You can't keep me from my own flesh and blood. I shake my head, a small smile playing at the corners of my lips. Watch me. And with that, I turn and walk away, Lily still nestled in my arms. I can feel Jasper's eyes boring into my back, but I don't look back. I don't give him the satisfaction. Because I know deep in my bones that I've already won. I've won the battle for my own soul, for my own happiness, and no matter what Jasper does, no matter how hard he tries, he'll never be able to take that away from me. I am a survivor, I am a warrior, and I will never, ever let anyone make me feel powerless again. I never thought I'd be in this position, standing in our living room, my heart pounding as I confront my husband of 10 years. Trent's voice echoes from the kitchen, his laughter grating on my nerves as he boasts over the phone about his latest financial scheme. You wouldn't believe how easy it was to pull one over on her, he chuckles. Aaliyah's so focused on her little part-time job at the library, she has no idea what I've been doing with our money. My blood boils as I listen to him mock my efforts to contribute to our household. I step into the kitchen, my eyes narrowed. What exactly have you been doing with our money, Trent? He spins around, his expression shifting from surprise to annoyance. I've got to go, he mutters into the phone before hanging up. What's with the interrogation, Aaliyah? I'm just trying to make sure we're set for the future. By manipulating our finances behind my back? I counter, my voice rising. We agreed on a plan, Trent. What happened to saving for our retirement, for our kids' education? He scoffs, waving his hand dismissively. Your little library job isn't going to cut it, Aaliyah. I'm the one bringing in the real money here. If you want to be useful, why don't you quit and focus on taking care of the house? His words cut deep, but I refuse to back down. I may not make as much as you, but my job matters to me, and I have a right to know what's happening with our finances. Trent steps closer, his face hardening. You don't need to worry about that. I've got it under control. Just trust me and stay in your lane. I shake my head, anger and betrayal coursing through me. I can't do that, Trent. Not when you're hiding things from me and making decisions that affect both of us without my input. He throws his hands up in exasperation. You're being ridiculous, Aaliyah. I'm doing what's best for us, even if you can't see it. No, you're doing what's best for you, I retort, and I won't stand for it anymore. Trent's eyes narrow. What are you saying? I take a deep breath, my resolve strengthening. I'm saying that if you can't be honest with me and treat me as an equal partner, then maybe we need to rethink this marriage. He stares at me, his mouth agape. You can't be serious. I am, I say firmly. I won't be manipulated and belittled any longer. If you can't respect me and our agreements, then I'll have to find a way to protect myself and my future. Trent's face reddens, his fists clenching at his sides. You're making a mistake, Aaliyah. You need me. I meet his gaze, my voice steady. No, Trent, I need honesty, respect, and a partner who values me. And if you can't give me that, then I'll find my own way forward. With that, I turn and walk out of the kitchen, my heart racing, but my spirit unbroken. I know the road ahead won't be easy, but I refuse to let Trent's betrayal define me. I'll fight for my independence and reclaim the life I deserve, no matter what it takes. The hum of conversation fills the air as I step into my in-laws' backyard, the scent of barbecue wafting by. It's a typical family gathering, but the weight of my confrontation with Trent still lingers heavily on my mind. I spot his sister Marla and make my way over, hoping to find an ally in the midst of this turmoil. "Marla, can I talk to you for a moment?" I ask, my voice low. She turns, her brow furrowing at my serious tone. "Sure, Aaliyah. What's up?" I glance around, ensuring we have some privacy. "It's about Trent. I recently found out he's been hiding things from me, making financial decisions behind my back." Marla's expression shifts, a flicker of discomfort crossing her face. "Oh, I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding, Aaliyah. You know how Trent is, always trying to do what's best for the family." I shake my head, frustration bubbling up inside me. "No, Marla, it's more than that. He's been manipulating our finances, putting our future at risk. I need your support in this." She averts her gaze, fidgeting with her drink. "I don't know, Aaliyah. Trent's mentioned some things about your spending habits. Maybe you two just need to communicate better." My jaw clenches, realization dawning on me. What exactly has Trent been saying about me? Marla hesitates, her discomfort palpable. "He's just concerned, Aaliyah. He says you've been irresponsible with money, that your job at the library isn't contributing enough." Anger surges through me, my voice rising. "That's not true, Marla. I've been nothing but responsible. Trent's the one who's been lying and hiding things." She takes a step back, her eyes widening at my outburst. "Calm down, Aaliyah. I'm sure Trent has his reasons. Maybe you're just overreacting." I stare at her in disbelief, the sting of betrayal intensifying. "Overreacting? My husband is spreading lies about me to his own family, and you think I'm overreacting?" Marla shifts uncomfortably, glancing around at the other family members who are starting to take notice of our heated exchange. "Look, Aaliyah, I don't want to get in the middle of this. You and Trent need to work it out yourselves." I laugh bitterly, shaking my head. "I came to you for support, Marla. I thought you, of all people, would understand, but I see now that Trent has you all fooled." She opens her mouth to respond, but I hold up my hand, cutting her off. "Save it. I don't need your judgment or your excuses for Trent's behavior. I'll handle this on my own." I turn on my heel, ignoring the curious stares from the rest of the family as I make my way back inside the house. My heart pounds in my chest, a mixture of anger and determination coursing through me. I find Trent in the kitchen, laughing with his brother. He looks up as I approach, his smile fading at the sight of my expression. "Aaliyah, what's wrong? What's wrong?" I echo, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. "What's wrong is that you've been lying to your family about me, painting me as some irresponsible spender, while you hide your own financial misdeeds." Trent's face hardens, his eyes narrowing. "I don't know what you're talking about, Aaliyah. I've only ever tried to protect you, to do what's best for us." I scoff, my hands curling into fists at my sides. "Protect me? By undermining me and spreading lies? No, Trent, you're only protecting yourself and your own selfish interests." He takes a step towards me, his voice lowering. "Be careful what you say, Aaliyah. You don't want to make a scene in front of everyone." I meet his gaze, my resolve unwavering. "I'm done being careful, Trent. I'm done letting you control the narrative. From now on, I'm taking control of my own life, my own future, and I won't let you or anyone else stand in my way." With that, I brush past him, ignoring his calls for me to come back. I step out into the backyard, my head held high despite the whispers and stares. Let them talk, let them judge. I know the truth, and I won't be silenced any longer. The library has always been my sanctuary, a place where I can escape the chaos of my personal life and find solace among the stacks. But today, as I sit at my desk, my mind is far from the books that surround me. I can't shake the nagging feeling that Trent's deception runs deeper than I initially thought. I pull up our online banking statements, my eyes scanning the transactions. At first glance, everything seems normal, but as I delve deeper, I notice a series of large withdrawals that I don't recognize. My heart sinks as I realize the money has been transferred to an account I've never seen before. With trembling fingers, I dial the bank's customer service number. After a series of automated prompts, I finally reach a representative. "Hello, my name is Aaliyah Thompson. I'm calling about some unusual activity on my account." The representative asks for my information and pulls up my account. Miss Thompson, I see a recent transfer to an investment account. Was this not authorized by you? I take a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. No, it wasn't. Can you tell me more about this investment account? There's a pause on the other end of the line. I'm sorry, Miss Thompson, but the account is not in your name. It appears to be a business account opened by a Trent Thompson. My stomach drops, a wave of nausea washing over me. A business account? What business? The representative hesitates. I'm afraid I can't disclose that information, as you're not listed on the account, but I can tell you that a significant sum was recently transferred from your joint account to this business venture. I close my eyes, the pieces falling into place. Trent's secrecy, his dismissal of my concerns, his lies to his family. It all makes sense now. He's been using our money, my money, to fund some secret project behind my back. Anger courses through me, hot and intense. I thank the representative and hang up, my mind racing. I need proof, something tangible to confront Trent with. I can't let him get away with this. I spend the next hour combing through our financial records, printing out statements, and highlighting the suspicious transactions. By the time I'm done, I have a stack of evidence that even Trent can't deny. I'm just gathering my things to leave when a familiar voice cuts through the quiet of the library. Aaliyah, we need to talk. I look up to see Trent standing in the doorway, his expression a mixture of anger and annoyance. I'm busy, Trent. Can't this wait? He strides over to my desk, his eyes narrowing. No, it can't. I just got a call from the bank about you snooping around in our accounts. What the hell are you doing? I stand up, squaring my shoulders. I'm doing what you should have been doing all along, Trent, being honest and transparent about our finances. He scoffs, rolling his eyes. Oh, please, you're just being paranoid. I told you, I have everything under control. I slam the stack of papers down on the desk, the sound echoing through the empty library. Under control? Is that what you call taking out a second mortgage on our home without telling me? Is that what you call funneling our money into some secret business account? Trent's face pales, his mouth falling open. How did you? It doesn't matter how I know, Trent. What matters is that you've been lying to me, betraying my trust, and putting our future at risk. He takes a step back, his expression hardening. You don't understand, Aaliyah. This business venture is going to change everything for us. I'm doing this for you, for our family. I laugh bitterly, shaking my head. No, Trent, you're doing this for yourself, and I won't stand by and watch you destroy everything we've built together. I gather up the papers, stuffing them into my bag. I'm going to find out exactly what you've been up to, Trent, and when I do, there will be consequences. With that, I brush past him, ignoring his calls for me to come back. I've had enough of his lies and manipulations. It's time for me to take control and fight for what's rightfully mine. The coffee shop is bustling with activity as I slide into a booth, my hands wrapped tightly around a steaming mug. Across from me sits my best friend Sarah, her eyes filled with concern as she takes in my haggard appearance. Aaliyah, what's going on? You sounded so upset on the phone. Sarah reaches across the table, squeezing my hand. I take a deep breath, the events of the past few days spilling out in a rush. It's Trent. He's been lying to me, Sarah. He took out a second mortgage on our house without telling me and has been funneling money into some secret business account. Sarah's eyes widen, her mouth falling open. Oh my God, Aaliyah, that's terrible. What are you going to do? I shake my head, feeling overwhelmed. I don't know. I have proof of what he's been doing, but I don't know how to confront him without things getting ugly. Sarah leans forward, her expression determined. You can't let him get away with this, Aaliyah. You need to protect yourself and your assets. I nod, knowing she's right. I've been documenting everything, gathering evidence, but I feel like I need more support, someone who can guide me through this process. Sarah thinks for a moment, then snaps her fingers. I know someone who might be able to help. My cousin went through a nasty divorce last year, and she worked with this amazing financial advisor. Let me give her a call and see if she can recommend someone. Relief washes over me, grateful for Sarah's support. Thank you, Sarah. I don't know what I'd do without you. She smiles, squeezing my hand again. That's what friends are for, Aaliyah. We'll get through this together. A few days later, I find myself sitting in the office of a highly recommended financial advisor, Mr. Henderson. He listens intently as I outline my situation, his expression growing more serious with each revelation. Mrs. Thompson, I must say, your husband's actions are highly concerning. Taking out a second mortgage without your knowledge and investing in a business without your consent is a clear violation of your financial agreement. Mr. Henderson frowns, shaking his head. I nod, my stomach twisting. I know. I just don't know how to confront him without things escalating. Mr. Henderson leans forward, his voice calm but firm. The first step is to secure your own finances. I recommend opening a separate bank account in your name only and transferring a portion of your joint assets into it. This will ensure that you have access to funds should your husband attempt to freeze your accounts. I make a note, my hand trembling slightly. Okay, I can do that. What else? You mentioned that you have evidence of your husband's financial misdeeds. I strongly advise making copies of all relevant documents and storing them in a secure location, such as a safety deposit box. This will be crucial in building a case against him. I nod, feeling a sense of empowerment. I've been doing that. I have statements, receipts, everything. Mr. Henderson smiles, his eyes kind. Good. You're already taking the right steps, Mrs. Thompson. I know this is a difficult situation, but you're not alone. I'll be here to guide you through the process and help you protect your financial future. I leave Mr. Henderson's office feeling a renewed sense of determination. I know the road ahead won't be easy, but with allies like Sarah and Mr. Henderson by my side, I feel ready to face whatever challenges come my way. That evening, as I sit at the kitchen table, surrounded by piles of financial documents, Trent walks in, his eyes narrowing at the sight. What's all this? He asks, his voice tight. I look up, meeting his gaze steadily. This is me taking control of my life, Trent. I know about the second mortgage, the secret business account, and I won't let you destroy our future any longer. Trent's face reddens, his fists clenching at his sides. You have no idea what you're talking about, Aaliyah. I'm doing what's best for us, even if you can't see it. I stand up, squaring my shoulders. No, Trent, you're doing what's best for you, and I won't be a part of it anymore. I gather up the documents, brushing past him. I'm fighting back, Trent, and I won't stop until I've reclaimed what's mine. With that, I walk out of the room, leaving Trent stunned and silent behind me. The battle lines have been drawn, and I'm ready for war. The sun is barely peeking through the curtains as I sit at the kitchen table, a stack of papers and a cup of coffee in front of me. I've been up for hours, going over the evidence I've gathered against Trent. Bank statements, receipts, emails, all painting a damning picture of his deceit and betrayal. I'm jolted from my thoughts by the sound of the front door opening. Trent strolls in, whistling off-key, his face breaking into a smile when he sees me. Morning, babe. You're up early. I take a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation to come. We need to talk, Trent. His smile falters, his eyes darting to the papers on the table. What's all this? I stand up, crossing my arms. This is evidence, Trent. Evidence of your lies and your financial infidelity. Trent's face hardens, his posture defensive. I don't know what you're talking about, Aaliyah. I've been nothing but honest with you. I scoff, shaking my head. Really? Then how do you explain the second mortgage you took out on our house without telling me? Or the secret business account you've been funneling our money into? He takes a step back, his eyes widening. How did you? It doesn't matter how I know, Trent. What matters is that you've been lying to me, hiding things from me, and I won't stand for it anymore. Trent's expression shifts, his mouth twisting into a sneer. You don't understand, Aaliyah. I'm doing this for us, for our future. You should be grateful. I laugh bitterly, tears stinging my eyes. Grateful? For what? For you putting our financial security at risk? For you betraying my trust and treating me like I'm nothing more than an inconvenience? He takes a step towards me, his voice lowering. Watch yourself, Aaliyah. You don't want to push me too far. I stand my ground, meeting his gaze head on. No, Trent. You're the one who's gone too far, and I'm done being your doormat. I gather up the papers, shoving them into a folder. I've hired a private investigator, Trent, someone who's going to dig into every dirty little secret you've been hiding. Trent's face pales, his hands clenching into fists. You're making a mistake, Aaliyah. You don't want to go down this road. I brush past him, grabbing my purse. The only mistake I made was trusting you, but that ends now. I head for the door, my heart pounding in my chest. I'm halfway out when Trent's voice stops me. You'll regret this, Aaliyah, I promise you that. I turn back, my eyes blazing. The only thing I regret is wasting so many years on a lying, manipulative bastard like you. With that, I slam the door behind me, the cool morning air hitting my face. I take a deep breath, feeling a sense of liberation wash over me. I know the road ahead won't be easy, but I'm ready to fight for what's mine. Later that day, I find myself in the office of the private investigator I've hired, a no-nonsense woman named Joan. She listens intently as I outline my suspicions, her pen scratching across a notepad. Based on what you've told me, Mrs. Thompson, it sounds like your husband has been engaging in some serious financial misconduct. Joan looks up, her eyes serious. I nod, my stomach twisting. I need proof, Joan. Something concrete that I can use against him. She nods, leaning back in her chair. I'll dig into his financials, his business dealings. If there's anything shady going on, I'll find it. I feel a sense of relief wash over me, grateful to have someone on my side. Thank you, Joan. I don't know what I'd do without your help. She smiles, her eyes kind. You're doing the right thing, Mrs. Thompson. Standing up for yourself, fighting back. It takes a lot of courage. I leave Joan's office feeling empowered, ready to face whatever challenges come my way. I know that with the evidence we gather, I'll be able to confront Trent and reclaim what's rightfully mine. That night, as I lie in bed, I can't help but feel a sense of anticipation. The wheels are in motion, and soon Trent will have to answer for his actions. I close my eyes, a smile playing at my lips. The game is on, and I'm playing to win. The mediator's office is cold and sterile, the fluorescent lights casting a harsh glare on the conference table. I sit across from Trent, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, a thick folder of evidence resting in front of me. He looks haggard, his usually polished appearance replaced by dark circles and a rumpled suit. The mediator, a stern-looking woman in her 50s, clears her throat. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, we're here today to discuss the terms of your divorce and the division of assets. I understand that there have been some disputes regarding finances. I nod, my voice steady. That's correct. My husband has been engaging in financial fraud and deceit, hiding assets and taking out loans without my knowledge or consent. Trent scoffs, rolling his eyes. That's ridiculous. I've done nothing wrong. I open the folder, pulling out a stack of documents. I have proof, Trent. Bank statements, emails, receipts, all showing the money you've been funneling into your secret business account. The mediator takes the documents, her eyes scanning the pages. These are serious allegations, Mr. Thompson. Do you have anything to say in your defense? Trent shifts in his seat, his eyes darting around the room. Those documents are taken out of context. I was simply trying to secure our financial future. I laugh bitterly, shaking my head. By lying to me? By putting our home at risk with a second mortgage? No, Trent. You were only looking out for yourself. He leans forward, his face twisting with anger. You have no idea what you're talking about, Aaliyah. You've never understood the sacrifices I've made for this family. I meet his gaze, unflinching. The only thing you've sacrificed is your integrity, Trent, and I won't let you get away with it any longer. The mediator holds up her hand, silencing us both. Mrs. Thompson, you mentioned having evidence gathered by a private investigator. May I see that as well? I nod, pulling out another stack of papers. This is just the tip of the iceberg. My investigator uncovered a pattern of financial misdeeds going back years. Secret investments, shell companies, all designed to hide assets from me. Trent's face pales, his hands clenching into fists. You had no right to dig into my private affairs, Aaliyah. This is a violation of my privacy. I scoff, rolling my eyes. You gave up your right to privacy the moment you started lying to me, Trent. The moment you betrayed our marriage vows. The mediator looks up from the papers, her expression grave. Mr. Thompson, in light of this evidence, I strongly advise you to come clean and agree to a fair division of assets. Continuing to deny wrongdoing will only make matters worse for you in court. Trent's jaw clenches, his eyes flashing with anger. This is all a misunderstanding. I won't be bullied into giving up what's rightfully mine. I lean forward, my voice low and steady. What's rightfully yours? You mean the money you stole from our joint accounts? The home you put at risk with your lies? No, Trent, you've forfeited any claim to those things. The mediator nods, her tone firm. Mrs. Thompson is correct, Mr. Thompson. Based on the evidence presented, you have engaged in serious financial misconduct. If you continue to contest the division of assets, I will have no choice but to recommend that this case proceed to trial, where a judge will likely rule in your wife's favor. Trent's shoulders slump, defeat etched on his face. Fine. What are your terms, Aaliyah? I sit back, a sense of triumph washing over me. I want the house free and clear. I want a fair division of our savings and investments, and I want you to sign over your interest in the secret business account to me. He nods, his voice barely above a whisper. Okay, you win, Aaliyah. I gather up my papers, standing to leave. No, Trent, we both lose, but at least now the truth is out there, and I can finally start rebuilding my life, free from your lies and deceit. As I walk out of the mediator's office, I feel a weight lift from my shoulders. The battle may be far from over, but for the first time in a long time, I feel a sense of hope. I know that no matter what challenges lie ahead, I have the strength to face them head-on, armed with the truth and the knowledge that I fought for what was right. The courtroom is packed, the air thick with tension as I take my seat at the plaintiff's table. Trent sits across the aisle, his face a mask of barely contained rage. His lawyer, a shark in an expensive suit, leans over to whisper something in his ear. My own attorney, a fierce woman named Valerie, squeezes my hand reassuringly. Don't worry, Aaliyah. We have an airtight case. Trent's lies are about to catch up with him. The judge, a stern-looking man in his 60s, enters the courtroom, and we all rise. He takes his seat, shuffling through the papers on his bench. In the matter of Thompson v. Thompson, we are here today to determine the division of assets and to address the allegations of financial misconduct. Counsel, please proceed with your opening statements. Valerie rises, her voice clear and confident. Your Honor, we will prove that the defendant, Trent Thompson, engaged in a pattern of deceit and financial fraud, hiding assets and taking out loans without the knowledge or consent of his wife, Aaliyah Thompson. We have irrefutable evidence, including bank statements, email records, and testimony from a private investigator that will show the depth of Mr. Thompson's betrayal. Trent's lawyer stands, his voice smooth and oily. Your Honor, my client is a victim of a vindictive wife who will stop at nothing to ruin his reputation. The evidence presented is circumstantial at best and does not prove any wrongdoing on Mr. Thompson's part. The judge nods, his expression unreadable. Very well, let's hear from the witnesses. Over the next several hours, a parade of witnesses take the stand. The private investigator details the complex web of financial transactions Trent used to hide his assets. The bank manager confirms the second mortgage taken out on our home without my knowledge. Even Trent's former business partner testifies to the secret deals and shady investments. Through it all, Trent sits stone-faced, his jaw clenched tight, but as the evidence mounts, I can see the cracks beginning to form in his facade. Finally, it's Trent's turn to take the stand. He swaggers up to the witness box, his arrogance on full display. But as Valerie begins her cross-examination, his confident veneer begins to crumble. Mr. Thompson, can you explain why you took out a second mortgage on your family home without your wife's knowledge or consent? Valerie asks, her voice sharp. Trent shifts in his seat, his eyes darting around the room. I was just trying to secure our financial future. Aaliyah doesn't understand the sacrifices I've made for this family. Valerie scoffs, holding up a stack of documents. Sacrifices? You mean the money you funneled into your secret business account? The investments you made without your wife's input? Trent's face reddens, his fists clenching. Those investments were sound. I was going to make us rich. Valerie shakes her head, her voice dripping with disdain. Rich, while putting your family's home and financial security at risk? No, Mr. Thompson. The only person you were looking out for was yourself. As Valerie continues her relentless questioning, Trent's composure crumbles. He lashes out, his voice rising to a shout. You have no idea what you're talking about. I'm the victim here, not her. The judge bangs his gavel, his voice booming through the courtroom. Order. Mr. Thompson, control yourself, or I will have you removed. In the end, the evidence is overwhelming. The judge rules in my favor, granting me the house and a significant portion of Trent's ill-gotten gains. Trent storms out of the courtroom, his face a mask of fury. As I stand on the courthouse steps, Valerie by my side, I feel a sense of relief wash over me. It's been a long, painful battle, but I've emerged victorious. Trent's lies and betrayal have been exposed, and I can finally start to rebuild my life on my own terms. I know there will be challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long time, I feel a sense of hope. I've reclaimed what's rightfully mine, and I won't let anyone take that away from me again. The future is bright, and I'm ready to face it head on. The sun streams through the windows of my new home, casting a warm glow on the hardwood floors. It's been 6 months since the divorce was finalized, and I've finally finished unpacking the last of the boxes. The house feels like a sanctuary, a place where I can start fresh and build the life I've always wanted. I'm just putting the finishing touches on my new home office when the doorbell rings. I open the door to find Sarah, a wide grin on her face and a bottle of champagne in her hand. Congratulations, Aaliyah. I can't believe you did it. Your own business, your own home. You're an inspiration. Sarah pulls me into a tight hug, her eyes misty with emotion. I laugh, feeling a sense of pride swell in my chest. I couldn't have done it without you, Sarah. Your support means everything to me. We settle onto the couch, sipping champagne and chatting about my plans for the future. I tell her about the small business loan I secured, using my portion of the settlement to fund my dream of opening a community bookstore. I never thought I'd be able to do something like this, Sarah, to take control of my life and create something that's truly mine. I shake my head, still in disbelief. Sarah nods, her expression serious. You've come so far, Aaliyah. I'm so proud of you. As we talk, my phone buzzes with an incoming text. I glance down, my stomach dropping as I see Trent's name on the screen. Can we talk? I need to see you. The message reads, his tone pleading. I show the text to Sarah, my hands shaking slightly. What do I do? I thought I was done with him. Sarah takes my hand, her voice firm. You don't owe him anything, Aaliyah. He lost the right to be a part of your life the moment he betrayed you. I nod, taking a deep breath. You're right. I'm not going to let him ruin this moment. I delete the message, feeling a sense of liberation wash over me. Trent may have been a part of my past, but he has no place in my future. A few weeks later, I'm standing in front of my new bookstore, a sense of pride swelling in my chest as I cut the ribbon at the grand opening. The community has rallied around me, filling the store with well wishes and eager customers. As I mingle with the crowd, I catch a glimpse of a familiar face in the back of the store. Trent stands there, his expression a mix of anger and desperation. I excuse myself from the conversation and make my way over to him, my heart pounding in my chest. What are you doing here, Trent? I thought I made it clear that I don't want to see you. My voice is steady, but I can feel my hands trembling slightly. Trent steps forward, his eyes pleading. Aaliyah, please, I made a mistake. I never meant to hurt you. I scoff, shaking my head. A mistake? Is that what you call lying to me for years? Stealing from our family? No, Trent. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. He reaches for me, but I step back, my voice rising. I've built a new life for myself, Trent, a life that doesn't include you, and I won't let you ruin that. Trent's face twists with anger, his fists clenching at his sides. You think you're better than me now? You think you can just cut me out of your life? I meet his gaze, unflinching. I know I'm better than the lies and the betrayal, and I know that I deserve more than what you gave me. I turn to walk away, but Trent grabs my arm, his grip tight. You'll regret this, Aaliyah. You need me. I wrench my arm free, my voice cold. No, Trent, I don't need you. I never did. With that, I walk back into the bookstore, my head held high. I'm surrounded by the people who love and support me, the people who have been there for me through thick and thin. As I look around at the smiling faces and the shelves filled with books, I feel a sense of contentment wash over me. I've overcome so much to get to this point, and I know that no matter what challenges lie ahead, I have the strength to face them head on. I am Aaliyah Thompson, a survivor, a fighter, and a woman who has reclaimed her life. And nothing, not even the ghosts of my past, can take that away from me. I can't believe you, Zara. I slave away at work all day to come home to this slop? Ethan hurled his plate at the wall, shattering it. I flinched, my voice quivering. I'm sorry. I had a migraine today, and... Excuses. That's all I ever hear from you. Ethan sneered, his face contorted with rage. "You're lucky I even married you, considering how plain and unremarkable you are." His words cut deep, reopening wounds I thought had long since healed. I met Ethan 3 years ago when I started working as a receptionist at his law firm. Despite my quiet nature and average looks, he pursued me relentlessly, showering me with compliments and grand romantic gestures. Swept up in the whirlwind of his charm, I fell head over heels. Our courtship was a fairy tale, but reality set in soon after we exchanged vows. Ethan convinced me to quit my job, insisting that he wanted me to focus on being the perfect housewife. I agreed, eager to please him and build our life together. But 3 months into our marriage, Ethan's true colors began to show. He nitpicked every aspect of my homemaking, from the way I folded his laundry to the seasoning in my cooking. Nothing I did was ever good enough. Honestly, Zara, sometimes I wonder why I bother coming home at all, Ethan sighed dramatically, running a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair. You can't even handle the most basic tasks. I bit my lip, fighting back tears. I'm trying my best, Ethan. It's just been a difficult day and... Oh, spare me the pity party, he scoffed, rolling his eyes. You don't know what a difficult day is. You sit around this apartment all day, doing God knows what, while I'm out there busting my ass to provide for us. The irony of his statement wasn't lost on me. It was Ethan's idea for me to quit my job in the first place, yet he never missed an opportunity to throw my unemployment in my face. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my frayed nerves. I appreciate everything you do for us, Ethan. I'll try harder, I promise. You better, he warned, his tone icy. I didn't marry you for your scintillating conversation, Zara. The least you can do is keep the house in order and put a decent meal on the table. With that, he stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door behind him. I sank to the floor, hugging my knees to my chest as silent sobs racked my body. How had my life come to this? What happened to the charming, attentive man I fell in love with? As I sat there, surrounded by the shards of the shattered plate, I couldn't help but feel like they were a metaphor for my marriage. What once seemed so perfect and promising was now broken beyond repair, and I was left to pick up the pieces, alone and disillusioned. As the weeks turned into months, Ethan's verbal abuse only escalated. He seemed to take sadistic pleasure in tearing me down, finding fault in every aspect of my existence. Zara, have you gained weight? He asked one evening, eyeing me critically as I set the table for dinner. You're looking a bit softer these days. I glanced down at my body, suddenly self-conscious. I don't think so. I've been eating the same as always. Ethan smirked, a cruel glint in his eye. Well, maybe that's the problem. You're not exactly active, are you? Sitting around the house all day, it's no wonder you're turning into a blob. His words stung, but I tried to brush them off. I'll start going for walks in the evenings, I offered, hoping to appease him. Don't bother, he scoffed. It's not like it'll make much difference. You'll always be plain old Zara, no matter how much you try to improve yourself. I bit my tongue, fighting back the urge to defend myself. I knew from experience that arguing with Ethan only made things worse. As I served him his meal, he took one bite and grimaced. Christ, Zara, is this what you call dinner? It's like eating cardboard. I followed the recipe exactly, I said, my voice trembling slightly. I thought you liked chicken parmesan. I like it when it's cooked properly, he retorted, shoving the plate away. This is inedible. Honestly, I don't know why I keep you around. You're useless as a wife and homemaker. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wouldn't give Ethan the satisfaction of seeing me cry. I'm sorry, I whispered, gathering up his plate. I'll make something else. Don't bother, he sneered, standing up from the table. I've lost my appetite. I'm going out. He grabbed his coat and keys, slamming the front door behind him. I knew he was likely heading to a bar or to meet up with one of his colleagues. It wasn't unusual for him to stay out late, leaving me alone with my thoughts and insecurities. As I cleaned up the kitchen, my mind wandered to happier times. I thought about my old job at the law firm, how fulfilling it had been to contribute and feel valued. I missed the camaraderie of my coworkers, the sense of purpose I felt every day. But Ethan had convinced me to give all that up. I make more than enough money for both of us, he'd said. I want you to focus on making our home a haven, a place where I can relax and unwind after a long day at work. At the time, it had sounded romantic, the idea of being a devoted housewife. But now, I realized how much I had sacrificed for a man who didn't appreciate me, who seemed to delight in my misery. Late that night, as I lay in bed alone, I heard Ethan stumble in, reeking of alcohol and perfume. He collapsed onto the bed beside me, snoring loudly, not even bothering to undress. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, a hollow feeling in my chest. Was this what my life had become? A series of endless days, catering to a man who treated me like dirt with no escape in sight? I knew I should leave, that I deserved better than this. But a part of me still clung to the hope that Ethan would change, that he'd go back to being the charming, loving man I'd married. Little did I know, the worst was yet to come, and my illusions were about to be shattered in the most devastating way possible. It was a typical Sunday afternoon, and I was doing laundry, trying to keep myself busy and distracted from the constant tension that hung over our household. As I emptied Ethan's pockets before tossing his pants into the washing machine, his phone tumbled out, landing on the floor with a clatter. I picked it up, intending to place it on the counter, when a message flashed across the screen. It was from Valerie, Ethan's secretary at the law firm. I hesitated for a moment, knowing I shouldn't pry, but something compelled me to open the message. What I saw made my blood run cold. It was a photo of Valerie, scantily clad and posed provocatively, accompanied by a text that left little to the imagination. "Can't wait for round 2, baby. Last night was incredible." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My hands shook as I scrolled through the message history, each exchange more explicit than the last. It was clear that Ethan and Valerie were having an affair, and from the looks of it, it had been going on for months. Rage and betrayal coursed through my veins. How could he do this to me? After everything I'd sacrificed for him, all the abuse I'd endured, he had the audacity to cheat on me with his secretary? I heard the front door open and Ethan's footsteps in the hallway. I stormed out of the laundry room, his phone clutched in my hand, ready to confront him. "What the hell is this?" I demanded, thrusting the phone in his face. Ethan's eyes widened for a moment, but he quickly composed himself. "What are you doing snooping through my phone, Zara? That's private." "Private?" I laughed bitterly. "You're screwing your secretary, and you have the nerve to talk about privacy." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's not what it looks like. It's just harmless flirting, nothing more." "Don't lie to me," I screamed, hot tears streaming down my face. "I saw the messages, the photos. How long has this been going on?" Ethan's face hardened, his eyes turning cold. "Fine, you want the truth? Yes, I've been sleeping with Valerie, but can you blame me? Look at you, Zara. You're a pathetic excuse for a wife. I only married you because I thought you'd be easy to control, but even that's proving to be more trouble than it's worth." His words hit me like a slap in the face. I stumbled back, my mind reeling. "You never loved me," I whispered, the realization dawning on me. This whole marriage was a sham. Ethan smirked, a cruel twist of his lips. "Oh, don't act so surprised. Did you really think someone like me would genuinely fall for someone like you? You were a means to an end, Zara, a convenient little wife to keep the house clean and warm my bed at night, but even you couldn't get that right." I felt like I was going to be sick. The man I had loved, the man I had given up everything for, was nothing more than a manipulative, cheating bastard. "I'm done," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and grief. "I'm leaving, and I'm filing for divorce." Ethan laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Go ahead. But remember, Zara, you're nothing without me. You have no job, no skills, no prospects. Good luck finding someone else to put up with your pathetic existence." I didn't bother responding. I grabbed a suitcase and started packing, throwing in clothes and essentials with trembling hands. I couldn't spend another minute in this house, with this man who had shattered my heart and my illusions. As I walked out the door, I felt a sense of relief wash over me, tinged with the bitterness of betrayal. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, but anything was better than staying in a marriage built on lies and manipulation. It was time to pick up the pieces of my life and start anew, far away from Ethan and the toxic love that had nearly destroyed me. With my marriage in shambles and my heart in pieces, I found myself on my sister's doorstep, suitcase in hand. She took one look at my tear-stained face and pulled me into a tight hug, ushering me inside without a word. Over the next few days, I poured out my story to her, recounting every painful detail of Ethan's betrayal and the emotional abuse I had endured. She listened patiently, offering comfort and support, her anger at Ethan's actions simmering just beneath the surface. "You can stay here as long as you need," she assured me. "We'll get you back on your feet, Zara. You're stronger than you know." With her encouragement, I started looking for work, determined to regain my independence. I landed a job as a waitress at a high-end bistro, the kind of place Ethan and his colleagues would often frequent for business lunches. At first, I was nervous, worried that I wouldn't be able to keep up with the fast-paced environment and demanding customers. But as the weeks passed, I found myself thriving in the role, my natural warmth and attentiveness shining through. The regular customers began to take notice, complimenting me on my service and friendly demeanor. "You always manage to brighten my day, Zara," one elderly gentleman said, patting my hand as I refilled his coffee. "You have a real gift for making people feel welcome." Their kind words were a balm to my battered self-esteem, slowly helping me rebuild the confidence Ethan had systematically torn down. I started to see myself in a new light, not as the worthless, unlovable woman he had made me believe I was, but as someone with value and purpose. One evening, as I was clearing tables after a particularly busy shift, my manager pulled me aside. "Zara, I just wanted to let you know how impressed I am with your work," he said, smiling warmly. "You've become an integral part of our team, and the customers adore you. Keep up the great work." I thanked him, feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment wash over me. For the first time in years, I felt like I was truly good at something, that I had a place where I belonged. As I walked home that night, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I had come in such a short time. Just a few months ago, I had been a broken shell of a woman, convinced that I was nothing without Ethan. But now, I was standing on my own 2 feet, building a life for myself that had nothing to do with him. When I arrived at my sister's apartment, I found a large envelope waiting for me on the kitchen table. My heart sank as I recognized Ethan's handwriting, and with trembling fingers I tore it open. Inside were divorce papers, already signed by Ethan. A note was attached, his words dripping with disdain. "I've made it easy for you, Zara. Just sign on the dotted line, and you'll be free of me. Not that anyone else would want you, but at least you won't be my problem anymore." I stared at the papers, a mix of emotions swirling within me. Relief that I could finally sever ties with the man who had caused me so much pain. Anger at the callous way he dismissed our marriage, and a tiny lingering sense of sadness for the love I had once believed we shared. But as I picked up the pen and signed my name, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I was no longer Ethan's wife, no longer bound to a man who had never truly loved me. I was Zara, a woman with her own strength, her own worth, and a future that was mine to shape. I slid the papers back into the envelope, sealing it with a sense of finality. Tomorrow I would mail them to Ethan's lawyer, and my new life would truly begin. I had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to find out. A few weeks after I sent the signed divorce papers, I decided to visit the apartment Ethan and I had once shared to collect the last of my belongings. As I stepped inside, a flood of memories washed over me, both good and bad. I pushed them aside, focusing on the task at hand. I was just finishing up when I heard the front door slam open. I spun around to see Ethan standing there, his face contorted with rage. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he snarled, storming towards me. I stood my ground, refusing to be intimidated. "I'm just getting the rest of my things, Ethan. I have every right to be here." "Like hell you do," he shouted, grabbing my arm roughly. "This is my apartment, Zara. You have no claim to it anymore." I yanked my arm free, glaring at him. "Actually, Ethan, this apartment has always been in my name. My grandparents gave it to me as a gift, remember? You never had any legal right to it." His eyes widened, and for a moment I saw a flicker of uncertainty cross his face. But it was quickly replaced by fury. "You can't just sell it without my consent," he bellowed. "I won't let you get away with this, Zara. I'll take you to court and make your life a living hell." I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "Go ahead, Ethan. Take me to court. I'm sure the judge would love to hear about your infidelity and emotional abuse. I have plenty of evidence to back up my claims." He opened his mouth to retort, but before he could speak, the front door opened again. We both turned to see Valerie standing there, her eyes wide with shock. "Ethan, what's going on?" she asked, her voice trembling. I smiled coldly. "Hello, Valerie. I see you two are still going strong. I hope you know what you're getting into with this one." Valerie's gaze darted between Ethan and me, confusion and fear written all over her face. "Ethan, what is she talking about?" Ethan's face paled, and he took a step towards her. "Valerie, baby, it's not what it looks like. Zara and I are just having a little disagreement about the apartment. It's nothing to worry about." I scoffed. "A little disagreement? Is that what you call it when you ambush your ex-wife and try to intimidate her into giving up her property?" Valerie's eyes narrowed and she crossed her arms over her chest. "Ethan, I think you have some explaining to do." I picked up my box of belongings and brushed past them, pausing in the doorway. "You two deserve each other," I said, my voice dripping with contempt. "But Valerie, if I were you, I'd watch my back. Ethan has a habit of lying and cheating to get what he wants." With that, I walked out, leaving them to their own devices. As I stepped out into the sunlight, I felt a sense of triumph wash over me. I had stood up to Ethan, had shown him that I was no longer the meek, submissive woman he had married. I was stronger now, and I wasn't going to let him push me around anymore. As I made my way back to my sister's apartment, I couldn't help but smile. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. Free from Ethan's manipulation, free from his constant criticism and abuse. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. I had survived Ethan's betrayal, had picked up the pieces of my shattered life, and put them back together. And now I was ready to start a new chapter, one where I was in control of my own destiny. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was never going to let anyone treat me the way Ethan had ever again. I was done being a victim, done being a doormat. From now on, I was going to stand up for myself and fight for the life I deserved, and heaven help anyone who tried to stand in my way. A few days after the confrontation at the apartment, I received a call from an old coworker at the law firm. She had overheard Ethan spinning a tale to Valerie about moving into his family's luxurious vacation home, and she couldn't help but reach out to me. "Zara, I know it's none of my business, but I thought you should know," she said, her voice laced with concern. "Ethan is lying to Valerie about his living situation. I've seen the place he's talking about, and it's a far cry from the mansion he's describing." I thanked her for the information, a plan already forming in my mind. I knew Ethan's lies were going to catch up with him sooner or later, and I was determined to be the one to expose him. I dug through my old files until I found a photo of the actual vacation home, a rundown shack that was barely habitable. Armed with this evidence, I made my way to the law firm, determined to confront Ethan and Valerie. As I walked into the office, I saw them standing together by the water cooler, laughing and flirting as if they didn't have a care in the world. I marched up to them, a smile plastered on my face. "Ethan, Valerie, so good to see you both," I said, my voice dripping with false sweetness. They turned to face me, Ethan's eyes narrowing in suspicion. "What are you doing here, Zara? I thought I made it clear that I didn't want you around." I ignored him, turning to Valerie. "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation about the vacation home, Valerie. It sounds absolutely lovely, but I think there's something you should see." I pulled out the photo of the shack, holding it up for her to see. "This is the real vacation home, Valerie. The one Ethan has been lying to you about." Valerie's eyes widened, and she snatched the photo from my hand, studying it closely. "Ethan, what is this? You told me it was a luxury estate with a pool and a tennis court." Ethan's face paled, and he stammered, trying to come up with an explanation. But before he could speak, I pulled out my phone, playing a series of audio recordings. The recordings were of Ethan's raunchy encounters with various women at the office, evidence gathered by a fed-up coworker who had had enough of his misconduct. The sound of his grunts and moans filled the air, interspersed with the giggling and sighing of his conquests. Valerie's face turned bright red, and she rounded on Ethan, her eyes blazing with fury. "You bastard! You've been cheating on me this whole time, haven't you?" With every woman in this damn office. Ethan held up his hands, trying to placate her. Valerie, baby, it's not what it sounds like. I can explain. But Valerie wasn't having it. She slapped him hard across the face, leaving a bright red handprint on his cheek. Save it, Ethan. I've heard enough. I'm going straight to HR and reporting your sorry ass for sexual harassment. We'll see how long you keep your job once they hear about this. She stormed off, leaving Ethan standing there, his mouth agape. He turned to me, his eyes filled with rage and desperation. You bitch, he snarled, taking a step towards me. You've ruined everything. I'll make you pay for this, Zara. I swear to God, I'll destroy you. I laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. You've already destroyed me, Ethan. You took everything from me, my love, my trust, my self-respect. But now it's my turn. I'm going to watch you lose everything, just like I did, and I'm going to enjoy every damn minute of it. With that, I turned on my heel and walked out, leaving him to face the consequences of his actions. I knew it was only a matter of time before the truth came out, before Ethan's web of lies unraveled completely, and when it did, I would be there to watch him fall. True to her word, Valerie marched straight into HR and reported Ethan's misconduct. She provided them with copies of the audio recordings I had shared, as well as her own testimony about his lies and infidelity. The fallout was swift and severe. Ethan was immediately suspended pending an investigation, and within a week, he was fired from the law firm. His reputation was in tatters, and word quickly spread throughout the legal community about his unethical behavior. I watched from the sidelines as Ethan's life unraveled, feeling a sense of grim satisfaction. He had brought this upon himself, and now he was paying the price for his actions. But even in his downfall, Ethan couldn't let go of his ego. He showed up at my sister's apartment one evening, pounding on the door and demanding to see me. I opened the door warily, keeping the chain latched. What do you want, Ethan? He looked haggard and desperate, his eyes bloodshot and his clothes rumpled. Zara, please, you have to help me. I've lost everything, my job, my reputation, even Valerie. I have nowhere else to go. I stared at him incredulously. You've got to be kidding me. After everything you've done, you have the nerve to come here and ask for my help? He dropped to his knees, clasping his hands together in a gesture of supplication. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm begging you, Zara. I'll do anything. Just give me another chance. I shook my head, feeling a mix of pity and disgust. Ethan, I gave you more chances than you ever deserved. I put up with your abuse, your lies, your cheating, all because I loved you. But that love is gone now, and it's never coming back. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears. Zara, please, I know I can change. I'll be a better man, I swear it. Just don't leave me like this. I sighed, closing my eyes for a moment. When I opened them again, my gaze was steady and resolute. Ethan, I'm not leaving you. I've already left. I moved on with my life the moment I walked out of our apartment with divorce papers in hand. I reached behind the door and picked up a small box, handing it to him through the gap. Here, I packed up the rest of your things from the apartment. Consider it my final act of kindness. He took the box, his hands shaking. Zara, I held up a hand, cutting him off. I don't want to hear it, Ethan. We're done. I'm done. I have a new life now, one that doesn't include you, and I suggest you start building one for yourself, because I won't be there to pick up the pieces anymore. With that, I shut the door, sliding the chain back into place. I leaned against it for a moment, taking a deep breath. I could hear Ethan on the other side, sobbing and pleading, but I tuned him out. I had meant what I said. I was done with Ethan, done with the toxic love that had nearly destroyed me. I had fought too hard and come too far to let him drag me back down into the darkness. I pushed myself off the door and walked into the living room, where my sister was waiting with a cup of tea and a sympathetic ear. I sat down beside her, taking the mug and inhaling the comforting scent of chamomile. You did the right thing, Zara, she said, squeezing my hand. I'm proud of you. I smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. I know, it wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I'm ready to move on, to start a new chapter in my life. She nodded, her eyes shining with love and understanding. And I'll be right there with you, every step of the way. I leaned my head on her shoulder, feeling grateful for her unwavering support. Together we sat in silence, sipping our tea and listening to the sound of Ethan's footsteps fading away into the night. A month had passed since I last saw Ethan, and my life had taken a turn for the better. I had accepted a dream job in Seattle, working as a paralegal at a prestigious law firm. It was a fresh start, a chance to build a new life far away from the painful memories of my past. I was packing up the last of my belongings when I heard a knock at the door. I opened it to find Ethan standing there, looking disheveled and desperate. "Zara, please, I need to talk to you," he said, his voice hoarse. I sighed, crossing my arms over my chest. "What do you want, Ethan? I thought I made it clear that we were done." He pushed past me, stumbling into the apartment. I could smell the alcohol on his breath, and I wrinkled my nose in disgust. "I've lost everything, Zara," he slurred, collapsing onto the couch. "My job, my reputation, even my apartment. I've been sleeping on friends' couches and in my car. I'm drowning in debt, and I don't know what to do." I stared at him, feeling a mix of pity and revulsion. "I'm sorry to hear that, Ethan, but what do you want me to do about it? You brought this on yourself." He looked up at me, his eyes bloodshot and pleading. "I need you, Zara. I need you to give me another chance. I know I can change. I know I can be better. Just please, don't leave me like this." I shook my head, a sad smile playing at the corners of my mouth. "Ethan, I've given you more chances than I can count, and every time you've let me down. You've hurt me in ways I never thought possible, and I can't go through that again." He reached for me, his hands shaking. "But I love you, Zara. I've always loved you. We can make this work. I know we can." I stepped back out of his reach. "No, Ethan, we can't. Because the truth is, you never loved me. You loved the idea of me, of having someone to control and manipulate. But that's not love, and it never will be." I walked over to the door, opening it wide. "I think it's time for you to go, Ethan. I have a new life waiting for me, and you're not a part of it." He stumbled to his feet, his face twisted with anger and desperation. "You can't do this to me, Zara. You can't just walk away like this." I smiled, feeling a sense of calm wash over me. "I can, and I am. Goodbye, Ethan." He stared at me for a long moment, his eyes filled with a mix of rage and despair. Then, without another word, he walked out the door and out of my life. I closed the door behind him, leaning against it for a moment. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. It was finally over. I was free. I walked over to the window, looking out at the city skyline. In the distance, I could see the Space Needle, a symbol of the new life that awaited me. I smiled, feeling a sense of excitement and anticipation. I had a new job, a new city, and a new love waiting for me. A man I had met at the bistro, a kind and gentle soul who had helped me heal and find happiness again. I picked up my suitcase, taking one last look around the apartment. It had been my home for so long, but now it was time to say goodbye. I walked out the door, feeling a sense of lightness and freedom. The past was behind me, and the future was bright with promise. As I stepped out into the sunlight, I couldn't help but smile. I had survived the worst that life had thrown at me, and I had come out stronger on the other side. I was ready for whatever lay ahead, ready to embrace the new chapter in my life with open arms. And as I walked down the street, I knew that nothing could ever hold me back again.